Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regularly scheduled board meeting here for June 14th. I'll call this meeting to order now at 6:36 this evening. Marion, if you could, do a roll call. Here.
Here.
Here. Sorry. Jill Ramey.
Here.
Bill Monroe.
Here.
Mike Treader.
Here.
Marion Finney. 7 present.
All right, thank you, Marion. All right, and is there a motion to support the agenda approval?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All right, first by Ryan, a second by Jill. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any noes? All right, motion passes 7-0. All right, this evening on to visitor comments. We have no online public comments submitted this evening. We have one person speaking this evening, Mr. Russo.
Hey everyone. So, first of all, I feel so much more at ease without a mask, so I can breathe and the tension for me is a lot lower. I did wanted to get into just my experience a little bit from the last year and just even dealings today with the school district. So one thing I'll say up front is that in my dealings and in all of my public records requests, the district administration, I feel like, has done a really solid job. And so Nate, I thank you for that. That's something where every single person I've talked to has acknowledged your responsiveness and the responsiveness of the principals as well, not just you. And that includes board members, that includes all the community members, and in the public record, many of the teachers, all the teachers that I could see, it was all of the same feedback, and so that's something I just wanted to acknowledge. To go along with that, I'd like to thank the administration for continuing with the summer school and the enrichment program. That's something that we almost lost a couple years ago, and that's something that I think, especially this year, the kids needed. And then moving on to the masking update, when I looked at the data, it just seems like a no-brainer, like, duh. But then when I followed through in all the other school districts that I've been dealing with all year, it was anything but. Their response was wildly different than ours. And they, having looked at the data, realized that we hadn't had a case in this district in 17 days. We've had 3 in like the last month and a half. Like, it made sense, and you did the thing that made sense. And that's, honestly, it's a relief to someone like me who's been kind of dealing with a lot of things that haven't made sense. And even this morning, dealing with what was coming in the Dane County survey, that's something that there was a statement in there that it felt really, really bad. And I had a conversation with Nate right away in the morning and then with Heather shortly thereafter. And I feel like we got to a place where everyone was heard, there was an acknowledgement of the problem, and something done to address the problem. And again, that's another relief, as that has not been the experience of the year. Getting into the other side, though, the board as a whole has not had that same kind of feedback from the community, from the members that are sitting here. And the people that came to that chat session are people that have all struggled with the board, I think, and maybe not all of them, there's one I don't know. But like, there's been a lot of hostility towards members of the community, including myself. And that's more than just me. I know I can be a problem. I know I'm very assertive, and I know that that can make people very uncomfortable and defensive. I get that. But when I look at Marion Finney, like, she's one of the first people I recognized in this community. She was running Toddler Time at the time, who is now being run by April Kidman, who was run by my wife Sandra after Marion. Like, these are people that have been serving the community just so faithfully for so many years. And I've watched Marion through the years, even through Parents for Change, which I wasn't really on board with, but the one comfort for me during that process was Marion. Like, I could see her working with everyone. And to have her have the experience that she had over the last year was something I find totally unacceptable. Like, the toxic nature of this board has been noticed. The split in this board has been noticed. It's a big deal. And we can't just push it off in little platitudes of we could do better. It's more than that. It's a really serious problem. Like, irreconcilable differences with these community members right here. Public record showed an email from Trina Pauley, and it was of somebody traumatized, not of somebody like, hey, this is okay. She's the PTO president. Like, these relationships have been irreconcilably damaged by the leadership of this board. And so while the administration, and I mean, honestly, you owe Nate so much, and I think you recognize that. He's taken so much heat off this board. He's done so much to keep families not just placated, but heard. And, you know, without Nate, this would have been a very bad situation. And some of the other communities in Dane County got there, like Oregon, Verona. I mean, there's hatred, just rampant, like, it's so bad. DeForest. And so, again, I thank the administration for the work they've done, but I don't just challenge this board to do better. I demand that this board do better. Like, I can't conceive of a person that can't work with Marion. I just can't. Like, one of the nicest human beings I have ever met, and so gentle, and would never say mean things about anyone else here. Like, just refuses to, even when it would have benefited her. And that's something that hasn't been repaid. And so I'm watching, and I will continue to be active. And thank you again, Nate, for all you've done. And I don't see Heather, but Chelsea, thank you for dealing with the pool stuff, and thank you for dealing with me, because I also am traumatized. And you'll experience some of my PTSD, I guarantee it. My kids no longer go to this school, and that's traumatic for our family. Jeremiah just met some friends I was talking to Mike about a minute ago, the Cartwrights, that he hasn't seen all year. Just down the block, we didn't know that. But that kid desperately wants to be around people. But we don't trust this school, and that's traumatic for us. Isaac just had to deal with his new private school, and they were concerned about his math, English, band, and they're like, we can make that work. But with German, they're like, please don't put him in German too. They're like, please. It wouldn't be fair to him, it wouldn't be fair to us. And so he feels upset. He's quite upset about, like, I just wasted some of that time. And so, Trevor, thank you for letting me run on a little extra. But please do better. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. All right, that's all we had for public comments this evening. Next up would be any correspondences that we have.
I do have three different types of correspondence from two different individuals. The two types are for the Wall of Fame ceremony that we had, and then the district retirement party. Two of them come from Sharon Moss. Sharon says to Mr. Perry and the Wall of Fame Committee, thank you for all you do to make recognition today so special, and for all of us who were nominated. June 5th, 2021 was a memory I will always remember and so appreciate all you did to make it so. Thank you again, Sharon. I'll read Sharon's second. To the Belleville School Board, thank you so much for sponsoring the retirement get-together for the 2020 and 21 retirees. And I will always thank you once again for the gift from the district I received last year. I can't begin to tell you how good it is to be recognized for our years spent in the district. It has been my pleasure to have worked here for 34 plus years. Thanks again, Sharon Moss. And one more, this one from Sue Ace, Belleville School Board. Thank you so much for the party and the beautiful necklace. I will cherish it as a lasting remembrance of my time at school. You guys are doing a great job, and I applaud you all. Thanks again, Sue. So those were three from our retirement parties and the Wall of Fame.
Nate, I would ask that the speeches that were read at the Wall of Fame presentation be put out somewhere so people could read them. They were incredible. And I think a true testament of those people that were, can't think of my word, into the Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
dedicated, something like that.
We'll do. I know Marie was working on those for a story and some posts, so.
Are you talking about the introductions or the acceptances?
Actually, both are relevant, but
I think that's a great idea, but I would make sure that the recipients are okay with that. I know this came up a couple years ago when we had our very first class, and I think there was a hiccup that
Yeah,
we ran into.
We had to edit some things out.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, will do.
Is there a section on the new website that could help highlight that as well?
She does have, Marie actually does just change the story today for the Wall of Fame. In fact, you'll see, I think, a picture of Betty
Okay.
up now, and so that story has changed out,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
we could find one.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Marion, for the suggestion. Any, anything else? Okay, no. Okay, right, moving on then, is there a motion to support the approval of the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Second, first by Ryan, a second by Jill. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any noes? All right, motion passes 7-0. Okay, next up on the agenda this evening, then we'll move on to some reports, and we'll start with Nate with the district administrator update.
As Mr. Russo had mentioned, masking changed very quickly. We were given just a little bit of forewarning from the county public health department that all of their orders would be removed on June 2nd. For the last 2.5 days of school, masks were optional and then into summer school. I can tell you that just in what I saw, you saw more students and staff on that first Wednesday with masks, and then even as those 2.5 days went on, you saw fewer of it. We have been cautious, though, however, upon parent requests, especially if it's going to a specific teacher, that if they're asking for their son or daughter to be masked at school, we give those reminders of that child. The numbers that were mentioned in the public comment section are extremely low. There has been very little happening in Belleville Census Tract, the school district of Belleville, and then even in the 4 tracts where we had very high numbers at one point. Those numbers have been below 5 consistently for a very long period of time now. So we're not seeing a lot of that or transmission within the school itself. The last time that we had a quarantine was all the way back the week coming out of spring break. So those numbers are looking fantastic. The Wildcat Wall of Fame ceremony, when the board discussed creating that Wall of Fame in 2017, what happened on June 5th, I think, was everything that we could have hoped for. It was a warm morning, starting at 10 o'clock, but those 6 recipients, and again, not all of them could be there. We did have some pass, and so we had family members or community members that were asked there to be there by these family members. It was a wonderful celebration of time that these 6 people put into the district, and I couldn't have asked for a better outcome. Again, I want to thank Mr. Hodson. The students that he had speak that day, to Marion's point, did a fantastic job. We had Kenneth Kramer's 2 daughters listening from out of state, emailed immediately afterwards that they were so excited and thankful, had even emailed me back that they had received the commemorative plaque and were very thankful for that. It was just a fantastic morning. The committee members, and we got obviously 3 of them, Ryan, Jill, and Marion are all on that committee or had been on that committee previously. We talked about potentially fewer inductees from here on out. We'll see how that goes, but we'll have students back. We've got no sign of let up from the original committee. It's just really doing very well, and it was a very proud day to be a Wildcat on that Saturday.
I would like to add, didn't know much about Mr. Kramer before, but he really did play a major part in the kind of agriculture focus in Belleville, so it was great to learn about that. And the students did an incredible job. I told Chad afterwards that he inspired them, and he denied that, but he also empowered them to give those interviews. It was just incredible to see the detail that they went into, and so it was really good. So.
Yeah, it was a fantastic Saturday. And I know Bill was there for part of that as well and was able to see some of it. The other piece that I'd like to point out is our awards on the last day of school. The awards totaled over $94,000 this year. That's the highest amount since I was middle and high school principal. Again, in a time when the community has been stretched, people have opened up their pocketbooks. It seems like every time we have a ceremony and it's been publicized, we have more people reaching out to say, well, I'd like to sponsor a scholarship. It's been fantastic, and oftentimes those scholarships are based off of somebody that did something, fantastic for them, a generous gift when they were young, and are passing those along. I also want to point out that it was a great year for the Wildcat Service Corps. We had 29 2021 graduates with Wildcat Service Corps, which means that over their 4 years, they put in 140 service hours. And Mr. Loshaw, who's here tonight, did a great job at the ceremony of documenting all the different ways that they had come up with those hours, over 5,000 hours between that group. Everything from, managing sports teams without any pay and for hours and hours, time in the community. It's just been a fantastic program again, and it keeps going. The ceremony itself, the graduation ceremony, it was warm. The students really wanted it outside. We were able to do fairly well with the heat in terms of water and trying to keep the ceremony moving along. Every time twice we've had this ceremony outside, we do learn things, and Heather and I even met the very next day on Monday to talk about changes if we do keep it outside that we could make to improve it even more. And of course, she'll get input from the class of 2022 on what they would like to be able to see there. The other thing that I would like to include with the board are evaluations and exit interviews. All of the non-union support staff and then the administration that I am a direct supervisor of. We've finished up almost all of those evaluations this year. It's been great feedback, I think, for them. Not that my feedback is great, but sometimes they have not had those evaluations in past years. And even to be able to listen to their input on what they see their job as, maybe what they can do differently, what more they can contribute to the district. It's been a great process. The exit interviews we've done, those have not been completed in the past. And there are some themes. Some of those themes are around compensation with those that are leaving. Not everyone leaving had mentioned that, but coming into the district, that certainly was noted. The other thing that they had specifically talked about is, especially our teaching staff, is more time to collaborate with their colleagues, which of course we'll try to build into our professional development schedule for 21-22. And although it was a tough year, I do want to just again say thank you to the staff. Even those that were leaving were saying, when asked about how morale is at this point, again, it was a tough year, but morale is still pretty strong. And our staff is taking care of one another this year. So that's something that will continue, not only obviously with evaluations, but with exit interviews, just so that we can have that mindset of continuous growth as we move forward. So that's all I had, Trevor.
Any questions for Nate? Nate, and the youth vaccinations have been going well.
Yeah, Nurse Becky finished up the last one last Tuesday with our 12-plus population. We were willing to offer transportation if that was necessary. Most parents got their students here to get the second vaccine. And again, a thank you to Belleville EMS. They were here once again to monitor. Obviously, after the vaccination shot, there's about a 15-minute period where we're asked to monitor those that had received the shot, and EMS has been, every time we've asked, they have been right here. Even at graduation, they were here knowing that it was going to be a hot day and we may have some people that might not handle the heat well.
Thank you to them as well for helping us out. All right, next up on the agenda this evening then is Mr. Fell with an update from the athletics and community education.
With our three reports, again, given time and the fact that we've got those out for you, hopefully we can keep these fairly short. If you have questions for Mr. Fell, so we don't have to repeat what's already in the report that you've read through.
I do want to update you on the spring sports that at the time I submitted the report. Of course, those sports hadn't finished up, and we still have some of them that are continuing as we speak. So we have softball and golf that is finished up this year, and then track and field for both boys and girls is continuing. They'll have regionals and sectionals, and the following week we'll have state. So we're hoping that we get a number of kids that'll participate in the sectional and then move on to state. We've got some hopefuls there as well. Girls soccer were regional champs that concluded here Saturday, and they beat Edgerton, and we play Evansville Thursday night here. So we were fortunate to host 3 of the regional games because we were top seed in our region. We are expected to win on Thursday, and then we would play, it looks like it's going to be McFarland, at McFarland. They did a little change in the venue, but they are regional champs, they're conference champs, and so they will be moving on as well. One thing that we started, if you remember, that we talked about the Huddle program. Huddle gave us opportunity to be a beta site, and so with the help of Mr. Edge and Mr. Armstrong, we were able to get that camera hooked up for the last couple of home football games, as well as the boys soccer, and then all the girls soccer season for the home games. The one nice thing, there are a couple of parents, WIA posts regional games and sectional games cannot be broadcast on Huddle unless you pay for them, because they're the rights for the WIAA. So we do have the Huddle camera. So last week, Saturday, we had a couple parents wanting to contribute towards the broadcast of that game, and they're going to do the same thing on Thursday here. So we are able to live stream those games through the generosity of a couple parents that have pulled their money together to do that. So those are a couple of the updated things that have happened since the report has been
What is
submitted.
the cost on that?
It's $150 a broadcast, and it's a separate broadcasting group that benefits. WIA doesn't benefit from it. They contract with WIA, so I'm sure there's some kind of benefit along the line, probably videotape production and sales of those events, especially as you go to state. Yeah. And something new tonight that I was just before I got here was up making sure the yoga class got going. They're doing it outside, up in that new little vestibule in between the old and the new school, that rubberized surface they have. So that's something new. And so they had 15 people that were there up using that facility. So that's the first time they moved outside. So it's kind of exciting to see that happen.
Where was that, Wayne? I'm sorry.
That's at the elementary school.
Yeah.
Typically, they were in the band room this past year, doing both in person and virtual. We've dropped the virtual, and now they're using the choir room up there when there's inclement weather, and then they're going to try to do as many as they can outside onto that soft surface area in the middle of the building.
Oh,
Yeah, the
okay,
courtyard.
there you go.
Yeah, I'm not sure
courtyard
what
area.
you call
There
that.
you go.
So they were excited about that to be
Yeah,
outside, so
nice.
it was kind of a neat thing. So, any questions yet?
Question on a couple of the numbers, Wayne.
Yeah.
I noticed, and I know some things are chalked up to COVID, but middle school, I was kind of curious about, number one, it's the only sport that was offered to them, and there was quite a drop.
Yeah.
45 to 15 kids.
Yeah, a lot of it had to do with the COVID concerns still with the programs. I expect those numbers to be back up next year.
Okay. And also, I'm glad to hear about the girls' success, but 30 to 13
Mm-hmm.
also.
Yeah, and it's kind of ebb and flow, and Coach and I talked about that the other day, and he said we'll be back up next year with numbers. It just is in the club program he saw this little dip, so it's hitting us. The same with wrestling. Wrestling will be going up too. It was real low this year, but with a surge in the 7th and 8th grade wrestlers and the spark in 6th grade, we should see those numbers increase as well.
So some of that might have been due to graduation, or losing some kids through graduation?
Losing some kids and the youth program, not having a dip in the youth program, so when those kids filter up here, some of them they lose to softball or to track. But there was a number of them that did not go out this year because of graduations, a couple seniors that chose not to go out because they would go late into the season. And I think that was some of it, as well as some COVID concerns and the dip in the fact that there's a dip in that those classes coming through. Yeah. The nice thing about soccer is they keep close track of those youth numbers, and they converse with me regularly saying, you know, this will be a low this year, but, you know, next couple of years it'll be back up to a lot higher numbers. Yeah, good questions.
How's the field looking after all the use this spring?
Yeah, actually, the stadium field I don't think has looked any better than what it was right now. The fact that we didn't have any major weather's incidences with football and soccer this spring, as dry as it's been, it's really in great shape. I think it's probably the best I've seen it in the springtime. When I was out there Thursday walking the field, I couldn't believe how ideal conditions it was for the game. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the baseball, softball fields with the weed and feed that we've been doing the last year and a half has really helped out. The baseball and softball fields are really nice. Now we got to work on the practice fields for soccer and the football field out there because they still have a lot of weeds. But we got a plan to get that fixed as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, good.
Great.
And one other thing is we'll start to open our facilities to outside groups. This year we kind of squelched those, and so I'm getting more and more interest in using the facilities again. So that'll be on the uprise as well. All right, thank you.
Any additional community ed classes?
Yeah, I'm working with, this summer, Marie Perry and I have been working together to offer a couple classes. You'll see a couple different ones this summer. And then the fall, we got to kick off with a couple other new ideas and different ideas. In communicating with my counterpart at Oregon, they saw a big dip with COVID in the participation, even if they tried to do online classes. Now, our online classes, we had like 7 or 8 people participate on online and about 4 or 5, I think it was maybe about 5 in person. So we did see a dip. There was one gal that consistently had come to the yoga class and called me the other day saying she couldn't make it because she's still concerned because she takes care of her 6-month-old as well, and she doesn't want any viruses transferred from that participating. But that was the only downside person that could not participate in something we've held in the past. But yeah, there's some new and exciting ones that will come up this fall, some sign making classes that we're going to offer. And then Marie and I are talking about some other classes that she may be able to offer in the arts area.
Anything to do with mental health?
We did try, and funny you should say that, I tried to do a mental health one virtually in partnership with Oregon. We didn't have anyone reply. It was meditating through, I can't remember how they said it, something through meditation. I don't remember what the name of the class was. But Oregon didn't run that class either. They just didn't have enough people interested, and that was going to be virtual. So we may take a look at that as a possibility for one for in person as well. It seems to be a hot topic right now. But unfortunately, I think with COVID and everything else, we just didn't have the numbers. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Wayne. All right, next up, we have Janan, Director of Transportation.
All right, good evening. Before I give my report, one thing I would like to say to all the parents out there that transported their kids throughout this school year is a huge thank you. Obviously, our ridership started out really low in the beginning. We only had the 4 routes in the beginning and then went to the 7 routes. This year for DPI, for our report, we had 358 students that we transported throughout the year. Last year, we had 648. When I looked at that, I'm like, that's 300 student difference. Like, where did we put those kids to begin with? The anticipation of Baker's Woods out here in our new hazardous area, I've been told that there could be as many as 100 homes out there. Anticipating what will we do if we have a large number of kids that go into that area. Our new hazardous area, we had down here. We had 9 of the possible 25 students riding the bus this year. When we report that to DPI, we get a certain amount of money for kids who live in a hazardous area who are less than 2 miles from school. Our current fleet of routes, I had attached that extra little page there for you. Leasing a new bus. This is the year, and we will probably end up needing to buy a new bus. We would retire bus 14. We are applying for a grant through the DNR for 25% of the cost of a new bus. One of the requirements on that is that you have to scrap the old bus, which is why we're leaning towards 14. That bus would not make a good sub-bus, so we would have to get rid of it. I've already been in contact with Nelson Bus and getting quotes on a new bus and possibly a used bus, if maybe that's the way that we want to go. I've also talked with the bank that we used the last time about financing, what we can do for that. This grant is used to get rid of the old buses to reduce emissions. Drivers, I'm actively looking for new drivers, if anyone knows of anyone. Nate has said that you have a We Can account, so I'm hoping that once maybe into July, we can do something with that and maybe see if we can get some. I have one potential driver who might be doing some sub-driving, and then we just recently hired a van driver, and she possibly may be interested in driving bus. Summer school started today. We have 2 routes. We have one north of town and one south of town. Originally, our numbers were north of town, we had 23 kids. That's bumped up to 22 and 26. South route, we had 34 kids, and that's bumped up to 34 and 46 kids going home. We have the 2 fishing classes, one at 8 and one at 10 that we're transporting for. And then, of course, we have park science on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
You're staying busy.
Pardon?
Said you're staying busy.
Yes.
So, a little bit more than, I guess, is the plan to bring to the board then a little bit better of a solid plan of what your findings are then, the advantage of going lease or buying out, or is this grant say that we have to buy it outright?
No, it does not say that you have to buy it outright. It does say that it can be a leased bus.
Okay.
Yep. And I think Sherry would probably appreciate us leasing it rather than buying it outright.
Right, absolutely. So just so the board knows, I challenged Nate and Janan a little bit to look into some electric buses that were all electric.
And I'm getting some information on that. I had looked into that because I had gotten a few emails about that. Just an FYI, electric buses range from around $300,000. And you have to buy a charging station. There's specialty mechanics that work on those because of the high voltage on them. And currently, they are not being used in this area. They are only being used on the east and the west coast because the battery does not like the cold temperature. The other downfall to them is the battery life is only about 120 miles. So for us to take those on, let's say like a sporting event or a trip, probably not going to be a good idea. Great for small routes around town in that, but other than that, no. I did talk with Nelson Bus about them. They have them, or they will be selling them. And he did say, right now they're not looking too good in this area, but eventually that will be something that we can look into.
Yeah, so I appreciate you at least checking it out.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I found interesting too is the fact that, well, they don't have heat in them. So,
That's the other thing. They don't, and that's another reason. So that might be a little cold for the kids in the wintertime, if they even start. They're looking at trying to draw heat from the battery into the bus because, yes, there's no heat in the bus.
Right, so that killed that whole idea. So while we're trying to be green in our thinking and stuff, I don't think we're quite there yet to go down that road.
Exactly.
And so we'll let the costs come down some more and hopefully some more grants in the future, come up.
Yeah.
Do you have any info as far as availability for buses? I know generally in vehicles, there's a shortage out there. Does the same go for buses, or?
When I talked to Nelson and I told him what we were looking at, as of right now, our delivery date would not be till probably the end of February. And, I mean, that's right now. So if we were not to order this bus until September, would that push us back even farther?
And used, any?
Nelson does have some used ones on the lot. Every 1 to 2 years, they will kind of rotate through theirs. So they could have a used one on the lot.
Used as in like 20,000 miles on it, or?
I don't know mileage, but I can tell you that it would be like 1 to 2 years old. It
Okay.
wouldn't be anything more than that.
Okay. Would it still be a lease option?
That I do not know. I would have to check into that with B&B Leasing Company, the finance department.
Okay.
How urgent is the retirement of 14?
It's nothing desperate right now. It does need a little bit of work. Maybe $2,500 worth, but is that something that we would want to put into a bus that we do plan to get rid of?
Right. Well, it sounds like you kind of have some more fact-finding
Yeah.
to go out and get, and we'll be curious to see what you come back with then.
Okay.
Shannon, I have a question about,
Yes.
So bus 14 is the one that we're looking to replace.
Yes.
If we wouldn't be able to get a bus until February, what is the plan? Just to keep using it and hope that it, is okay without the repairs? Or are you planning to kind of shuffle other buses to make it work, or?
We do have a couple spares. So if it came down to it, that it was urgent and we had to get rid of it, we could we could bring in one of the spares.
Okay. Thank you.
I got a question about the, looking for drivers.
Yes.
What's the driving test fee?
The driving test fee, I think, when I had mine 2 years ago, was about $50.
And how many drivers are you looking for, Janan?
I'm going to say at least 2, just to have a couple subs.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're lacking maybe a little bit, is in our subs.
We had rules to keep.
Oh.
in the report.
Yes, rules to keep. Well, things we've learned from COVID. Everyone loves assigned seats, because it's easier when somebody leaves something on the bus to know exactly whose it is. It's also easier when the kids have gotten on the bus and you've started out on, let's say, your afternoon route, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, my next stop, like, are they on? If you know the vicinity that they're sitting in, it's easier to look up and be able to see if they're there or if they're not there. So whether or not we keep the assigned seating, and whether or not we keep that by family, like with the younger kids, we did have a lot where we had like middle high school kids with their elementary school siblings, or if we would say we do it by grade level, that might be an option. And we all like the no eating on the bus, because we can't remember the last time we all emptied out the garbage cans. Obviously for sports, we would have to do some changes, but the no eating on the bus was great. We had less mess, less time cleaning up every week.
When you say everyone loves assigned seating, does that include the students?
No. I'm going to say the drivers love the assigned seating. I don't think all the kids loved it.
Oh, you're magical. I appreciate that I get the food, but I appreciate that you're rethinking it for sports. There were some hungry athletes.
Yes.
Long hauls last
Yep.
year, so, or this year.
Yeah, and I know that was hard.
Gina, I got a couple more questions.
Sure.
Just to kind of drive into this a little bit more, because I'm thinking more from the 10-year capital maintenance plan, right? So I remember when I was first on the board, we were kind of going down this road of like going forward with just leasing all buses going forward. And I guess my first question is that thought process maybe possibly changed? And have we put together a more formalized leasing plan on the buses so that we just get into a cadence?
So we do have that, and Sherry, so for example, there's 2 buses that are actually coming off this year.
Right, yeah,
So
I see that.
by only adding 1 on, it does help the budget. And then Sherry and Janan and I will touch base. Usually Sherry will let me know, if Janan lets me know we're gonna need another bus for the following year, then I'll touch base with Sherry on, well, what's coming off, or what do we have coming off? We're actually in pretty good shape in the upcoming years, that we have more coming off that we would need to add,
Yeah.
which gives us some flexibility.
Okay. So then would the ongoing plan then kind of be is like, just continue to evaluate on a yearly basis, rather than have just, okay, every 2 years, we're leasing a new bus?
I'm going to say to keep going on that every 2 years so that we don't end up with our sub buses being so old
That's kind of where I'm
and
going
breaking
with it.
down that we're having to put more money into those sub buses. If we can, like, for instance, if in 2 years, bus 8 would be the next bus to come off. That would be our oldest route bus that we have. 2 years after that, or our next bus to replace would be bus 9. So that's a fairly new bus. That's 5, 6 years old, I think. So if we can keep newer sub buses, that would be better than what we're doing now.
Well, yeah, that's kind of where I'm getting to, is like and what's the value of the trade-in too, right? If there's still some residual value on that to go towards, to offset the cost of the new bus. But at the same time, we're, really knocking down our maintenance cost.
And that's key too, because if we're having a fairly, okay, so 9 is 5 years old. So in a couple years, if we switch that to a sub bus, we're not going to see the maintenance costs on that we're seeing currently on our sub buses.
Yeah, so
But
we
we-
kind of get into this cycle of like, we have a bus in the fleet for 10 years and then it's out.
Exactly.
Janine, you're still pleased with how Matsky
Yes.
is handling everything?
Yes.
Any other questions?
We will have Janine back up with our action items, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jan.
Bring up, Becca.
All right. And then Becca's up next, Director of Student Services.
This one?
Oh, I think, are you the host?
Yes.
You might have to log into that. You'll have to do it.
On this one?
Wait. Oh, there we go. There we go.
There we go.
Okay. All right, say something, Rebecca.
Hello?
Again, in the interest of time. Try my volume. Do you want me to mute Dave? In the interest of time with Becca's report, we do have Jamie waiting for his signature. Becca, would you like to?
Hope Squad. So there were 6 participants who did that training last week, and they are starting to work on how they're going to roll the Hope Squad and that curriculum out. Actually, they're trying to incorporate it into the family night that we are planning in August as part of the Dane County grant that we got as well. So that's very exciting. So that's kind of a big thing. The other thing that I noted in there under student services is the human growth and development curriculum. That was going to be a project in our staff meeting we're going to work on this summer. We do need to put a curriculum committee together for that. So kind of waiting to see if we get a nurse hired that we could team up on that. We don't do human growth and development for spring, so we have a little bit of time to work on it in the summer and the fall. But yeah, there's some curriculums that if we can get done sooner than later, that would be good. Otherwise, it'll be into next year when we get that. But I just get it done before we use it before the 21-22 school year. The other highlight we have is that we only had 2 students that are doing extended school year or additional services based on coming from the pandemic. I think one of the things that the case managers noted to me was that actually some of our students got additional services through the school year when we were doing half days or we were bringing students in. When they were virtual, we were bringing them into the building. They were getting more services than they typically get, so we were able to make that up the ground during the school year with some of our students. So a lot of our students with disabilities ended in a really good place this year, so that was good. We have, I think, our students accessing extended school year this year. Last thing I wanted to highlight, I'll be really quick, is that there is another grant that is available to do that come out. It's an expensive application. It's due at the end of this week, but it's around homelessness. It will give us some extra funds to really work on bolstering up our homelessness resources, identification, and really to start bolstering some more community partnerships to help support our families in need. I think we had, for example, we did see several families reaching out for some support based off of losing jobs and things like that based off of the pandemic. So I think it doesn't ever hurt to try, but we're certainly saying no, but it would, I think, be awesome if we could get another grant to help bolster even more our families in need. So that's what I have for student services over and I don't think I can help that.
Any questions for Becca? Yeah. Becca, could you put a quick email to the board and just kind of highlight what you said? We had a hard time kind of hearing you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Becca, can you hear us now? Can you hear us now, Becca? Okay. All right. Becca, if you wouldn't mind putting together just a quick highlight email of kind of what you just covered, if it's not on your report to the board.
I missed that. Could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, I think it's probably going off your mic. If you could put together a quick highlight email and email it to the board, just highlighting anything that wasn't on your report that you just covered. We had a hard time hearing you.
I can do that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks for joining us this evening, Becca.
No problem. I enjoy seeing everybody. I wish I could be there in person. We're almost to the halfway mark, almost. So.
Great, thank you. Okay, next up for reports, then it'd be a CISA 2 report. Marion?
It'll be quick. I don't want to keep changing everything. We had our meeting on Tuesday, May 18th.
Marion, do you mind speaking into the mic a little bit more? Thank you.
So we had our meeting on Tuesday, May 18th. There wasn't anything, we didn't have a report that night as a special report from any of the staff. Tomorrow night is our delegate assembly, and Jill Underly will be the speaker. I think that's about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all we had for updates on reports. There's a few of them this evening. So we'll move on now to the discussion / possible action items. First up being the CISA 2 Jedi Virtual School. Nate?
Jamie, can you hear me? Okay, I'll just give a brief introduction, and then if the board has questions after that, that would be great. So at the May board meeting, I had brought to the board the first time the idea of using Jedi Virtual School as our virtual school option for the 2021-22 school year. And there's a couple of things that I wanted to highlight as to why we would go this route. The first, not in this particular order, this isn't necessarily the most important, but those staff members, grades 6 through 12, that were teaching concurrently last year, and most of you saw what that looked like, where you have a few students on a screen, and then you have the rest of the students in person. It was very difficult for our staff to manage and give both the students in person and the students online the best attention and instruction that they could. We did have several students that had reported that they had done much better in a virtual environment, whether that was distractions, less distractions, being able to work from home, but that they did much better from the spring of last year throughout the school year. And so to provide some kind of opportunity for them to continue in that avenue is something that the district wanted to explore. The other piece of Jedi, which is not all that common with the virtual schools, is that it does have 4K through 12 curriculum. When we were exploring over this last summer on other options, we could not get curriculum down that low with some of the other options that we were looking at. So Jedi does offer a 4K 12 curriculum option, coursework for all of our students across the district. And then finally, there are a number, in fact, when I had Pam Christian pull this report, 45 different students in our district that are currently homeschooled. And when we have reached out to those families in the past, especially when they might be looking to access, whether it's extracurriculars, it could be 2 courses at a time when they get into middle school. One thing that we had heard from is at different points in time, it's hard for them to access certain types of curriculum. And so one of the plans of the administrative team, we talked about this at our district leadership team meeting a week ago, was to reach out, if the board approves this tonight, reach out to all those homeschooled families, let them know about the opportunity if they wanted to be a Belleville student, but then access the curriculum that Jedi offers through that. So that's another option that we hadn't talked about. What I did talk about with some other districts and what they're doing. No new update on since last month on what Jedi offers, but remember that even though they would be going to school through Jedi, they remain a school district of Belleville student, and they can continue to participate in sports, extracurriculars, school functions as they normally would. We double-checked with Jamie's advice, we double-checked with the WIA and Mr. Fell, and of course that came back positive. In terms of the student interest survey, we did have 18 total students from 13 different families that expressed some type of interest in Jedi. And what we had discussed in May is in terms of cost, if even over those 3 years, you have 3 students that stay in the district instead of going to an online version, an online option elsewhere, the state funding alone will help pay for what we're talking about here. So of those 18 students and 13 families, about 10 of those families said that they would have perhaps some sort of interest beyond the first year, so into year 2, potentially year 3. So about half of those families would still be interested beyond next year. And then I did reach out, specifically had longer conversations with the district administrator in Boyd Turner, at Marshall, and then also at Edgerton in the past few days, and asked them about their experience. They did say that there's certainly a rigor to JEDI. It's not for students that are not attendees, and we're trying to, maybe a habitual truant, trying to get them to go to school that way. But they did say that Jamie has been an excellent leader in CISA 2 and JEDI, and is working to improve any kind of feedback that she gets from parents. The parent satisfaction survey that CISA 2 and JEDI had was really pretty positive. Most of those scores out of 5, 3s, 4s, and 5s from those families that have been in the system with JEDI. The total cost is, again, 2 years of about $10,000, another year of about $5,000, over the course of 3 years, $30,000 total. That doesn't include what we would pay for individual classes. We already pay those when we buy like a Wisconsin virtual school class for a student that's taking a class that we don't currently offer. Again, if we're able to potentially get some homeschooled students back because of this, if we're able to keep those families I just mentioned, those 18 students, 13 families here because we're offering this option, it should be fairly cost neutral. I've also mentioned that some of the things that we were doing all virtually last year, some of the programs that we bought, we're no longer going to continue on, won't have the need for, and so that will save some costs. One example is the premium version of Google Meet. You can see some of the issues we have with Google Meet right now, but that premium version we wouldn't have to pay the additional money for, which would save some cost over the budget. Remember, that would be over 3 years that we're looking at. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Hopefully, Jamie, I answered questions for the board, and anything that you'd want to respond to as well. I'm glad that you could make it. She offered to come all the way here. I didn't know what time she would actually be on, so I didn't want to make her travel all this way, and offered her this option, which I believe she had some softball games to attend as well tonight. So, questions for myself or for Jamie? And Jamie, maybe we should test your ability to speak to the board at this point.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Pretty well, yes.
Awesome.
Jamie, if you could, just a brief highlight, kind of in your own words, if you would share with the board, kind of what sets JEDI apart from any other virtual offering.
Absolutely. So I'm currently in my second year as director at JEDI. I was previously the curriculum director and student services director in Lake Mills. And Lake Mills was one of the original chartering members of JEDI, so I got to experience it from the district user side of the world. So that was before I came over to JEDI. But I think what really makes JEDI different than most virtual schools is it started in 1995 as a distance learning consortium for some smaller districts. The word JEDI stands for Jefferson and Eastern Maine Interactive. So they started in 1995 offering distance learning classes so that they could pool their resources in the small enrollment classes that they had. So like, you might have only 3 kids who want to take German in a district like Lake Mills. And you might have 3 more in Cambridge and 3 more in Marshall. And by the time you get to all those 3 more add up, you can afford a teacher to teach a class. But as individual districts, they couldn't. And so that's how JEDI started. And it is part of my mission to stay true to that JEDI we're trying to react to the world just like every other district is. But we're trying to meet the district needs throughout that. And so this year we did a study on synchronous, because we're an asynchronous program. And what would happen, so districts came to us and said, you know, our kids have really enjoyed the synchronous part of being at home, and they don't want to lose that if they come to Jedi. And so we did a synchronous pilot this year, and next year we will be offering optional synchronous sessions for the majority of our core classes, kindergarten through grade 10, as long as the enrollments are above a certain point, because we know that below a certain point, it doesn't make sense to do collaboration with each other, because nobody can collaborate with. So we're incorporating that in. So I would say Jedi is really trying to respond to what our district needs. So once you become a member of that district consortium, you get to come to our annual meeting each year, and you get to call me anytime you have an idea and say, what do you think about this? And then I put together a committee and that, you know, we flush it out and we see what we can do with it. It's not, I don't live in a place of, well, no, let's see what we can do with the design. So it's a really cool, responsive way to work together. It brings districts together too. The Jedi superintendents have a common purpose with Jedi, and it's really an awesome place to work together.
I have two questions for you. So we have not reached out to the homeschool families at this point. You've just surveyed the current enrollees.
Correct.
How would we handle if, whether we went with Jedi or somebody else, kids who might want additional help and they come in here and ask, you know, teachers that they're familiar with interacting with previous years? I mean, we wouldn't say, no, you can't do that, but.
We'd have to sort those out. I mean, they could still access that. One of the things that we did work out with Jamie is if it's a special education student, although Jedi makes those accommodations, it's still our case managers that would work with our students that were going to Jedi. So if a student needed help, let's say in a math course or something else, they just have to connect with a teacher that they'd be comfortable here. But I guess it would come down to what classes they needed help with and try to match up when those teachers are available. Remember, I'm sorry, Jamie. There is a teacher on the other end of that that they're supposed to be interacting, that's doing the grading, posting the lessons. So there's another teacher of record through Jedi that's there to help them as well.
And most teachers offer office hours every week to meet with kids, and that's their favorite part of teaching is meeting with kids. So we really encourage students to meet with the teachers from Jedi, because the teacher is being compensated to teach the child. So we want that. And I really encourage relationships with students. So when a student starts a course, they get a video introduction from the teacher. The parents also get that video introduction from the teacher so that they can see who that teacher is, get to know that teacher. And all of our full-time students are assigned an advisor that sends out weekly emails, really works to meet with the students, helps them connect with teachers, because we do know that there are some students who really struggle with that idea of reaching out to an adult for help. Some people it's just hard to ask for help in general, and some people it's just hard to make that first connection, right? So our adults, our advisors work really hard to help those students make connections with their teachers.
So Jamie, how many staff members are with Jedi?
Great question. So there are 6 of us full-time people. We will have 4 advisors, 2 administrators, and then a full-time tech person. So there's 7 of us full-time for next year. And then we have 66 teachers. They are operating on a stipend basis, so it's a little bit different. We don't have teachers on an FTE basis because it's per enrollment. We have, some teachers have 5 kids with us, and some teachers have 100 kids with us, depending on what they teach and how many kids they want to teach, which is really awesome. And then we have 16 learning coaches that
on your website, you have a list of schools that are currently using Jedi. I'm assuming Jefferson is probably the longest taking advantage of Jedi. But what are some of the other districts?
I'm not sure Jefferson was a part of the original contract. It was actually Lakeville, Cambridge. You think I would know this because I just did the study of it this year about who was with us, how long they were with us. I can bring it up. I have it somewhere.
And that's okay. I'm just wondering like how long other districts have been using Jedi.
Sure. So, Marshall has been with us, for over, we couldn't pinpoint, that was the one district, we couldn't pinpoint the exact date that they joined, but we figured it was around 2000. Most of our districts have been with us, for a long time, except for the 7 most recent, districts. So Waterford, Gideon, Waterford, Graded, and Edgerton joined this year. And then previous to that, Luxembourg, Castle, and Milton joined the year before that. And then Columbus just joined last month, and the possibility of your school district joining this month, such as that 20 districts. So when I started here, there were 14 districts. Part of the Jedi Consortium, 12 of them have been with Jedi pretty long term.
Okay, thank you.
Nate, my question is kind of geared towards the funding of this then. All right, we know that this becomes kind of cost neutral after, with 3 students with steady enrollment in this. We know that year 1's 10.5, year 2's 10.5, year 3's 5. What happens in year 4 and 5 when it's a 2-year renewal commitment? Is there pricing specific for that renewal?
Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but after year 3, we wouldn't have to continue on, but if we continued on, I believe it stays at that $5,000 level.
So, actually, our board approved a different structure. What is your total enrollment in Belleville?
About 960.
Okay, so they went to a sliding scale, because we had a couple districts reach out to us last year that were only like 200 students, and they could not afford to join Jedi. That $10,000 was too much. So, where is my sheet? I just had it up. The new sliding scale, the new fee sheet for Belleville puts you guys at $7,000 a year, flat rate always. Now, so it's actually less, it will be $21,000 for the 3 years.
Was that just changed, Jamie?
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about $21,000 over 3 years rather than $25,000.
Yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes. And then it would stay, at this point, unless our board would make a change in the fee, which their mission has always been to keep the prices as low as possible for the district. So as long as we're not operating in the red, I don't see them increasing the cost.
Okay. So then, year 3, 4, 5, as it just taking this snapshot in time, it would remain at a $7K base cost per year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-year contract.
3-year
and
contract
then
to start.
Annually afterwards, correct?
Is it a second 3-year contract, Jamie, or 1 year apiece after that?
So it's a little confusing to me because what happens is you sign a consortium agreement every time the charter changes. So the charter rotates every 3 years to a different district. So Belleville would be added to that list of, with 20 districts, it would be 60 years before it would be Belleville's turn to be the chartering district, which I always laugh at. I will be retired, and so will all of you, by the time that would even come to fruition. So it's a very interesting concept. And so with that, every 3 years, the consortium consortium agreement has to be signed because it goes to a new district. The board has said it's a 3 year initially, and then after that, as long as you let us know by the terms in the consortium agreement, which I believe is by January 1st, of the year upcoming, so we can do our staffing, configuration, then we can use. So at the end of not the end of the 3 years, so like at 2.5 years in January, you have to make a decision.
So, but, yeah, I think to answer your question, Barb, by the middle of that third year, we'd have to make a determination if we still have the student interest, and if it's viable for us to continue on beyond year 3.
For another 3 years? I got lost in
No,
that.
For another year, 1 year at a time.
Okay.
Well, but I'm looking in at the contract right now. The way the contract states right now, it says a member may renew its membership for subsequent 2-year terms after that, each a renewal term.
Can you clarify that, Jamie? 2 years after the initial 3-year contract?
I would have to look at that. I know that our board would let a person out after the 3 years. At any given year.
So the vote tonight is for the first 3 years.
So when you did the survey with the parents, and I'm looking at, was this the info they were given, the questions that are in the spreadsheet that you did? For the 2021-22 school year, I am interested in?
Yes.
Okay. So was there a suggestion, or was there great detail about who JEDI is, or what the program would entail, and the differences between what they're used to this year versus the rigor that was mentioned in JEDI?
I can bring that up.
Teachers are not rigorous, by the way, I know they do, but there's some differences, and I wonder if those were pointed out?
Sure, the prompts were, I can read through this with you. At the end of the 1920 school year and for all of 2020-21, School District of Belleville teachers provided virtual instruction to our own students. This may not be the case for for the 21-22 school year. At the May 10th meeting of the Board of Education, school board members learned about a virtual option through CISA 2 in Whitewater called the JEDI Virtual School. 13 school districts in southern Wisconsin currently use JEDI. Over 10,000 students are currently enrolled in nearly 1,000 courses through JEDI, 65 staff members. I think Jamie said now 66. And then they did have both websites. There's a specific CISA website, and then there's a specific JEDI website. Students can remain a Belleville Wildcat and take one or more courses or attend full-time at JEDI. JEDI offers options for students in grades pre-K through 12. The school district wants to gauge families' interest in this virtual programming before joining JEDI for a 3-year commitment for our district. Students and families' commitment to JEDI is for 1 semester at a time. And then the yes or no question was, for the 2020-21 school year, I'm interested in the JEDI Virtual School through CISA 2 for my child or children. I understand that my children could take as few as 1 course or an entire schedule through JEDI. JEDI is available again through students' grades pre-K through 12. After giving their name and grade, the second question was, I'm interested in the JEDI Virtual School for my children next year, and then I may also be interested in the JEDI Virtual School for my children beyond 2021-22. That was a yes, no, maybe.
So if they were to take 1 course, I mean, how many would they need to be considered a full-time Belleville student? What conceively,
Yeah.
for homeschooling, for instance?
Yeah.
They could choose to take 1 course through this, or anybody else for that matter.
Yeah. Are you talking specifically a high school student, Barb?
Sure, yes,
Yeah.
that's where my brain was. So
They'd
could
still
take
have to have
1.
their 8 credits per year.
So, but if they don't take any more than that, I'm not sure where the rest of their education would be. Would they fill it with other options?
If they only take, so if they're only taking 1 JEDI course, and again, there are other JEDI courses that they could take. For example, we've used things like American Sign Language through Wisconsin Virtual School before, other foreign languages that we don't offer here. The rest of their schedule would be filled out at Belleville High School. They still have to be a full-time student. They can't only take one course through JEDI, if that's what you're
So
asking.
through us, they would have to.
Correct.
They couldn't do like a separate partial homeschool and take a couple courses here, which is actually an option as for homeschoolers.
Yeah, if they're in the Homer system, correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they'd actually have to become a Belleville student, and then we'd have to work out the total number of credits to make sure that would look a little bit different at the elementary school.
So are you saying that, I guess I'm confused too, because, so are you saying that a student could so choose to take, say they want to take math, English, and science with JEDI, but then take the rest of the classes here within the district?
Yes, they typically, and Jamie, you maybe you could speak to this, typically at a high school, they'd be taking 1-2 courses, something like that, because we don't offer them.
Right.
Otherwise, they would typically enroll full-time with JEDI. When we've had homeschool students, particularly at the middle school, when they come in, oftentimes it's things that they may not be able to get through their homeschooling network. Band, choir, and art class, something that they don't currently offer. Could be German or Spanish as well. Whatever the situation, they do have to have, they'd have to be at the middle and high school level, they'd have to be a full-time student with us.
So typically the rule that we use with JEDI on the singleton, for singleton students is you can take 2 classes with us, or you can be full-time with us. But when you're full-time with us, you can also take up to 2 classes in the school. Because we kind of follow that course options rule that the state has out there, where you could take up to 2 classes at a higher education place for 2 of your classes and still be considered full-time in your school. We have been creative with a couple situations, but there are a lot of students who come to JEDI full-time, but then also want the band experience and go back to will come into the building for band, because JEDI does not do music very well at all, which breaks my heart. I was a former music teacher, but we don't have the technology to do music well yet, virtually. Maybe in 10 years.
Okay. What you thinking, Barb?
I'm just trying to organize my questions for this. So I'm trying to think of, so what is the need? And I've heard some kids do better virtually. It could possibly meet the needs where homeschoolers may want to take part in this. COVID, I think, was why we first started looking at it, but we've also talked about the numbers being low. I see a lot of questions as to how this would go down, and there's quite a price tag on it. Mike had a question about, see if I can find it, you mentioned that you didn't think after 3 years we probably would need it, if I'm remembering how you answered that correctly?
So just looking at the data that we had
Right.
from our survey, there's initial interest. Again, you've got 13 families that have said that they're already showing interest for next year. And then that's cut in half in years 2 and 3. So I can't guarantee what that interest is going to be beyond 2021-22, but there's certainly interest in that for next year. That's why we did the survey.
And I get that. I guess I just have concerns, when I see they can opt out after each semester. I guess you don't necessarily want to lock people in, and yet we're doing quite an investment for it as well, for a 3-year, that 3-year contract, I'm kind of having a
Remember, if we have just 3 students that stay and don't go elsewhere, and that's why we're talking about this in June, so that families can make their decisions and plans, it does save us. It is cost neutral at that point, given the state funding that we get per student.
And are we hearing that some families may do that? That if we don't offer a virtual option, that they may go elsewhere?
Well, that wasn't specifically in the survey
Sure.
as well, but.
But just in general, are you hearing anybody say that that's really?
Well, I haven't specifically asked that question.
Okay.
So, yeah. The other option is, if we don't go this route, are we going to be teaching concurrently again? Or are we just going to say there's no option? If you say there's no option virtually for our students, that may force the hand as opposed to having an option right here in Belleville.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, I'll let you finish here.
Well, do we have any data on what other districts, either countywide, well, since we covered two counties, both counties, or statewide, what they're doing in the fall? Or, I know everybody's kind of in that decision-making.
I don't
know
have
there are
that
some that are
data.
not offering virtual and,
Yeah,
But I
the
don't
only,
have
the only
numbers.
information that I would have would be anecdotally from what I see on the statewide listservs of school districts that have made those decisions.
What defines full-time with Jedi?
With Jedi, can you answer that question, Jamie? Full-time with Jedi would be how many courses?
So, our full-time programming per semester is 7 courses per semester. The district can approve more than that, but there's an additional fee for that 8th course if you want the kids to take 8 courses a semester. Most kids take 1 class or 2 classes. We really encourage kids to stay connected to their school as much as possible, so we encourage them to take that 1 or 2 classes in the building. Generally, if they take more than 2 classes with us, they are considered a full-time student with us.
And for us, of course, it's an average of 7 credits a year at the high school.
So for me, I'm kind of getting hung up a little bit, because I'm about the contracts and exactly how that verbiage and everything looks. So I guess for me personally, I'm a little hung up on just the contract language, if that, now it's been revised to a sliding scale, getting that updated. But then it's just some conflicting data as well, between what's in the contract to what's being listed in their fee structure, to what, you've kind of shared with us as well too, because the way I look at their fee structure page, you've got a consortium district fee of 10.5 plus a new to consortium district fee for the first year for another 5.
No, that was a first year fee. They didn't charge the $10,500.
Okay,
The first year it was just a $5,000, and our board did away with that because they didn't understand why we would charge less the first year when it's more work the first year.
right, okay.
It
Okay,
didn't
so,
make any sense.
okay, so then, if move forward, then contract language and everything would be updated to reflect just a flat 7,000 base annual contract price, plus then the full-time virtual programming per semester would be $24.75, and then any courses above that would be the singleton contract price.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they raised the fee for when we went to sliding scale to make up for some of the consortium fee loss, by doing a sliding scale, because we didn't raise our top rate higher than 10,500. So only districts larger than 5,000 are paying 10,500 per student, or per district, sorry. So the full-time person up there is now at 2,500.
Okay, $25.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is our break even premised on students that wouldn't otherwise be in our school being part of this Jedi program and therefore being part of our school, as opposed to, would there be any impact for us positively financially with students who are already our students but are looking to take some additional coursework outside of what we offer?
It would just, that would replace, Bill, in that situation, where we have purchased Wisconsin virtual school classes before, those would be taken through Jedi now. Yeah.
So in your opinion, that's kind of a wash?
A wash. That
Okay.
part of it is, yes.
And Sherry's found the money in the budget.
It says it's a wash.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, they are, if it's a virtual, if we're paying the virtual school or Jedi, I mean, it's just paying one or the other.
I think the challenge that I'm having, and probably some others are having, is that it seems like we won't know until we know. That without taking the risk, you're not gonna know what the answer is, because families can give you intentions all day long, but until you sign a contract, you don't know. And that's, it's, which I don't, in my opinion, doesn't mean that we don't do it. It just means we have to be realistic about the risk that we're taking in doing that.
Said there's 45 homeschooled families living within the district.
Correct.
If we got even just 3 of those kids with that,
Yes.
that's, I mean, and so then if they did get into Jedi, they could participate in school activities like soccer or stuff like that.
Yes.
If they're enrolled, so that could kind of be a draw.
Yeah, because they'd no longer be in the Homer system, they'd be Belleville students. Correct.
And so, all right.
Maybe I could get clarity from you again, Nate, and I know you spoke to this already. So, as I'm thinking of that, if a homeschool family starts their freshman off, and we're thinking we'll do this for 3 years, but probably not beyond that, and all of a sudden they've got a kiddo who's a junior, I mean, maybe we would relook at and see how successful it would be at that point if we still have that many people. That would be one of my, I'll stop that. Can you speak to that? If you think we would be done, we wouldn't have the need for current students in 3 years.
So to that point, Barb, I think if I'm hearing your question right, like if a student started and they wanted to be in Belleville, but do this virtually through Jedi, they get through their junior year with our first 3-year contract, and then we say we're not going to re-up. That's where we could, and Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we could buy an individual seat through Jedi as well. No?
No, they have to open enroll to Marshall currently. We can only take students to the open enrollment process.
So then they'd have to enroll here and go to.
Right.
Stay there, if we didn't renew.
Which would lose the probable, you're appealing to different groups for different reasons.
Right,
I'm not seeing
right.
them all come together, that in there's a lot of what-ifs on this one.
There are, and my only other thought behind this too is, and this is again a what if too as well, as we kind of look at the post-pandemic era as we begin to move into that, and the changes in the workplace environment with more parents and stuff working remote, or have the ability to work remote, are they going to be more distant as well? And is that something that's enticing to a family setting that, well, now I'm remote, we don't have to be here all the time, we can travel, and move around and stuff as well more often. Does that allow more flexibility within the family realms where the Jedi program would continue to further enhance that thought process? But again, that's a what if as well. So I think that's kind of where we're at, is how do we without, and that's where I suppose that financially responsible,
Well, one thing I'm not seeing is people coming to our meetings saying, I really want you to have virtual in the fall. I haven't seen any emails, I haven't, so I'm concerned that, and maybe some would try it as a trial, but as things get back to normal, I have a feeling there's gonna be a drop-off there even. We're not hearing a demand. Interest, yes, but that's far from a commitment, and I worry that it's not gonna be utilized to the point that it makes sense financially for the district.
The one thing that I would caution the board with then is if we don't join and we delay this, we make the statement that we're not going to do our own concurrent teaching, so our own teachers aren't going to be doing that, then there is no other virtual option, at least full-time virtual option, from what we've done so far this year. That makes sense.
think it's difficult to, I can't honestly say that I disagree with Barb's concerns. And at the same time, I also think that this landscape is changing so fast now, and the technology is developing so fast in terms of what does it look like to work these days? What does it look like to go to school these days? And, you know, there's potentially some real good options here. And yeah, at the end of the day, we don't know until we stick our foot in the water or jump in, I guess, in this case, because it's a commitment. I'm buoyed by the idea that there is interest, and particularly because I don't feel like we've really reached out to some of the demographic that we're probably going to want to and would expect to target more. We've just reached out to folks who are already here. So I think that there's potentially a lot more available to us that way. Yeah, I think it's a positive thing with a risk.
Yeah, I think this, you know, we'd have to really put some energy into a campaign on this to get it out there into the community. But yeah, I'm kind of in the same mindset as kind of where my thought was going to, as well as that.
I'll give you an example. If the $21,000 is throwing, and again, the board can make the decision that we're not going to offer a virtual option for next year. Just know that if there's no virtual option and they go elsewhere, it's harder to get them back. The $21,000, oftentimes if we send a student to a program like an alternative program, whether it's like Operation Fresh Start, whether it's the Badger Challenge in Baraboo, which we have several students over the last 2 years in those programs, alternative programs that we don't have, that's basically it's basically funds in from state funding, and then we're paying the exact same amount out, whether it's to OFS, Operation Fresh Start, or to Badger Challenge. So that when you're looking at, let's say, $8,000 in that situation, again, I see the risk that you're looking at $21,000 in a $13+ million budget. Just take that for what it is. But again, I just want to be clear. If we don't go this route, we're saying that there's no virtual option here for our Belleville students besides what we've done traditionally. It won't be our teachers teaching concurrently.
So it's $21,000, but then it's, and so here's a question, is in addition to that, it's $295 a course or $375 for each AP class.
And those
That's gotta be just high school then? Or is that?
Correct, right, well.
Well, it's $2,500 if they're full-time.
Full-time,
separate
right.
course.
And we have been paying that in Wisconsin virtual school courses. For example, if we bought like a AP biology course, we've been paying that in the past.
But this gives us the ability to retain them within the district, right? Whereas Wisconsin Virtual School, we've been buying 1-2 classes here and there, which doesn't affect that eligibility status.
Correct.
Right. So I think that's another big difference.
They're taking those, right, they're taking those independently.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then, so I think something else too that might help, you know, the board as well, Sherry, if you can even just give some rough numbers on, you know, we've had to make quite a bit of an investment now, you know, into the additional virtual, you know, programs that we need to support that we no longer will, you know, that would offset half of that 21,000 that we didn't have to pay out. I mean,
Just some of the things that we have mentioned, whether it's looking at Nearpod, a very expensive program is Turnitin.com, and there's some other options for that now. The full version of Google Meet, those will add up. I'm going to guess ballparking those, you're probably somewhere just south of $10,000 in a year.
So one question I have is, how quickly would we be able to reach out to those 45 homeschool families?
I would
Take
say
keen interest.
probably by the end of next week.
Is it worth putting off a decision until we hear back on that side of things too?
In terms of setup, Jamie, we had talked about the timeline of this. If the board doesn't make its decision till July, is it feasible to start in September?
Yeah, it's a little bit more work for your data person. We do have to request, yeah, we have to request the school code from the state. It's like adding another school to your district in your student information system.
Right.
So there's a bit of work that goes into that process.
And that's why we've had Mr. Armstrong, Pam Christian, Mrs. Norton on our earlier calls with Jamie and having met to know what we're going to have to do to get it ready by the start of the school year. You're suggesting, Mike, that we make those calls not knowing if the board's made a decision yet?
I was just saying, can we reach out to families and then have another meeting in 2 weeks or something?
We could. Is the data, other than interest, going to be any different than what you have with our internal?
Yeah, it's just making up that last bit of money, or making up that money and being more confident that we were gonna do that. That's my opinion anyways. If it was just 1 year and we had 1 year contracts, it'd be a little bit easier, but it's 3 years.
Well, I'll spin it this way too, because I see where you're kind of going with it, Mike. And I kind of had the same thought as well too, as, you know, proposing the idea of tabling it for, you know, a period of time to reach out to those. But I think another avenue to look at this is that even within our own internal data of just the student interest and family interest that we have here, supports, you know, would support, you know, the first 3 years, or at least the first 2 years, I should say, right? And then, you know, the third year is kind of that unknown, right? Is that the way I'm reading this right? Of those 10 families beyond 2021, yeah, so, you know, I think we have enough support internally that, you know, our risk management, you know, mitigation, you know, is driven downward quite a bit.
Yeah, and looking at those responses, there are four rows that have 2 yeses on them. And me, I want to interpret that as, yes, I am definitely going to do this for
Yeah.
2 years, where they could possibly be thinking, yeah, I'm interested in this for 2 years, but I'm not committed to it.
But
My
I think it
concern-
is something too, as well, is that, you know, we've learned a lot over this pandemic period, you know, and that we also, as a district, have to continue to find ways to evolve. And I think we are evolving outside of the brick and mortar setup that the public education system has been built upon, you know, and I don't think the brick and mortar is ever gonna go away, but I think expanding the opportunities for those, you know, into a virtual setting is kind of where we're going now.
Is there a way to pull those homeschooled families, for example, in a way that's more meaningful than what we've gotten internally? Because one of the questions I guess I have, if we can't do that, then there doesn't seem to be a purpose in putting it off to do that. If we do think that we can formulate something that's more meaningful, that's more reliable in terms of data to suggest that we certainly should enroll in this, then I think we should wait and we should poll and we should use that more meaningful data. But I think that's the crux of that problem, is knowing whether or not we can actually produce more meaningful data. Because if we can't, then we end up 2 weeks later in the same situation going, well, we don't know.
Are you asking them for a decision now, Bill?
I don't know. I'm not sure what metric we
Yeah.
would need to see to be satisfied that it's a reasonable risk.
I don't even know if it's just changing the word interested to something else.
where do you sign on?
Well, and I don't think people are gonna make a commitment to a program.
Yeah,
we're committed to.
I don't blame them.
That doesn't make sense
Yeah.
to
Right.
me either,
No.
so, I mean, asking them, we could ask them a million what-if questions, but unless we're actually offering it, I think it seems silly
Right.
to poll them.
To survey them. I'm hesitant to survey. I mean, we ran into that with, are we gonna, do you wanna go hybrid? And then we didn't do it. I just don't wanna open us up to more criticism. What if, because the parents may decide not to go this route, but we may decide not to go this route either. And what about the parents that say, yes, I definitely want that, and then we decide not to do it? Then it looks like we've kind of changed our mind too.
Nate, in the past, we have a pretty decent understanding as to why families are choosing an open enroll, don't we?
Open enroll out?
Yeah.
Yes. We have done outreach in the past, because we know who the new applications are each year. And then we also have a historical list and have made those calls in the past.
And in general terms, like, what is generally the reason as to why they choose not to enroll in the district?
When they've left, that ranges, I mean, historically, that's ranged from, we didn't have a 4K wraparound program at one point in time. Parents working in another district, like, let's say they drive into Madison to work, want their students to go to school there. Some dissatisfaction. I wouldn't say there was.
You have your homeschool group, right, on top of all that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it is driven by courses that aren't offered here.
Yeah.
Right? Especially for high school kids opening and rolling out, I'd say a lot of it is, I want to go and take this course and I know Verona offers it. and
Potentially, yeah. Early on, right.
offer it this way.
Yeah.
We already offer other courses in numerous ways that are not offered here.
Same thing, virtually.
But we already addressed that, was my
I
point.
know, but then we got the savings from not doing those to help offset. Right? Courses that we don't offer.
So-
and we go
So,
to-
yes, so that part wouldn't change, right? If we're already buying them, yeah. If we're already buying them from Wisconsin Virtual School, we'd then be buying them from Jedi. So it wouldn't be additional cost, right?
So do we have any more questions for Jamie, so that we can be respectful of her time,
Yeah.
I guess?
That's a good point, Marion, thank you. Yeah, are there any other questions? All right, Jamie, thank you so much for being patient with us, and giving us your time and your attention this evening. It's very much appreciated.
You're welcome, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
All right, so we've had quite a bit of discussion on this. I guess I'll throw it up. Are we at a point to support a motion on this, or?
I'm just
is there a
gonna,
different-
I'm gonna throw out a couple again. I just feel like there were lots of changes, how often does the change come with a lower financial price tag? But there was still a change from some of the things that we went on here. What you were just asking previously with Nate, where there was that approximate 10,000. Two things. One, we could in fact have a special meeting after we gather info if anybody feels that's needed, instead of waiting till July if that would be an issue. Another thing, Trevor, you mentioned something about making sure if we would go this route to campaign, I have concerns about campaigning as it's going into my head. I don't want to get to the point where trying to take kids out of the school.
Oh, no, and I wasn't
So-
trying to come across that. I guess maybe campaign isn't the right word to be using, but, an awareness that this is an option. I definitely, no, I don't wanna, say, hey, this is much better
Gotta
than
hit our
being in the
numbers,
building.
come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems to me that this is something that could be presented in a way that's like, hey, you know what, we're taking the next step, we're moving to the next level with what we're offering virtually and with things that we wouldn't otherwise have in our school. I mean, I think it can be presented in a very
It's a marketing.
positive, sort of enlightened way that, you know, we're advancing with the times and we're taking these steps to offer the next level for our students. I think there's a way to do it positively. You know, I'll never sit here and say I don't think that there's a risk in doing this. But it seems that some of the costs that we would be sort of dispensing with and you know, it ends up being an additional half of what we initially looked at what it would be, to take a risk to go to that next level and move to a system that maybe offers more for our students.
Just for clarity, the more that it offers students is a virtual option. There aren't different courses that we can't currently offer them, right? I mean, I get it's the whole virtual option,
Right,
but that is the new that we're offering.
correct. Yeah,
With the ability to stay within the district.
Right, I think that's key. We
Yeah.
don't want to lose these kids.
and, yeah, just one more point. We would really be switching vendors, right, from Wisconsin Virtual Schools to what we've done in the past when a student had reached out and said, I'd like to be able to take this class, but Belleville High School doesn't offer it. Can I take it someplace else? Now we'd be doing that through JEDI, but,
And they offer like American Sign Language, I think was one that you mentioned.
that I'd have to look in their course catalog book.
So maybe this is a stupid question, but we are cost neutral if we have 3 students that are over those 3 years. But in this first year, if we had 9 students, that takes care of it, you know, in terms of what we would pay, what we would get in, and we would be paying out.
Actually, at the 7,000, it's really 1 student per year.
Oh yeah, because the numbers changed. So that makes it,
Are you saying that our break-even cost at this point is 1 student per year, full-time?
Right, so 3 over the course of the 3 years.
3 over 3 years?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, now I understand.
My
completely
concerns are
different.
less.
I thought it was 3 students per year.
No, so when you look at,
Yeah.
so when we have a student that open rolls out, we lose about $8,000,
Okay,
okay? So if it's gonna cost us about $7,000 per year,
that's 1 student.
1 student per year.
I do want to speak to Barb's point. We had some things change tonight from what we were presented in terms of the fee schedule.
That was new to me.
Do we have that in writing anywhere? I mean, I would hate to make a decision based on something we don't really have in writing. We just heard on, you know, a virtual meeting.
Can we make that decision contingent upon confirmation of that?
You
If
could.
that's the
I
way
mean,
that
I'd
we're
feel
gonna
more
look at it,
comfortable
just-
if we actually had something,
Yeah, I
you
agree.
know.
Yeah.
We could put that into the motion, I suppose. The other option would be too, is to let Nate go back to JEDI, get all that in writing, and then we could just hold a quick virtual, special session, you know, in 1 week's time. Would be another one as well too, so we can all have that. I don't know if I don't think that would delay us too much then, Nate, huh?
No,
Would you want to also poll the homeschooling families? You thought you could do that in about a week?
by the end of next week, so that would be,
A week plus.
so I guess I'm just confused at what we're asking the homeschool families, if they're interested in coming back? Same question that we asked of our own students?
Looking for the interest, I don't have the wording for it.
I don't know. What do you got? I mean,
If the district was, yeah, I struggle with it a little bit too, kind of to Jill's point as well too, is like, we've done a lot of, you know, surveys and then information, data changes, and then we can't, or we don't choose to progress forward in that same path. And then it builds a level of frustration as well.
I think maybe if we word the question, you know, if we were to offer and if this happened, you know, make sure that they understand that it's not a guarantee.
You'd have to wordsmith that.
Sure. Yeah, I could do that.
what I think. I think we have enough interest within our district,
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, especially,
I don't need,
especially if it's moved down to 7,000, I would want to put that into the motion, that it would be contingent on that being the final number.
Yeah, but I mean, at one student per year, I mean, that, to me, that's an acceptable level of risk. I think that shouldn't be difficult to achieve.
I feel better about that.
Yeah, especially too, if we've got, 18 students possibly in the first year. Well, I mean, that really just covers us for the years 2 and 3, and then we evaluate, in year 3 again.
But I do agree with Jill too. I think we need to have that, either make this vote contingent or get those numbers and have a virtual meeting just to have it in writing, what it's actually gonna cost.
Nate, what would be easier for you from that perspective?
Either or. We may even have some late staffing that we could add on to that meeting.
Okay.
I'd rather have I can't say this was the information that I was provided with, and I wasn't told that was changing until we heard from her tonight.
Right. Yeah. So why don't we do this? I'd propose then that we table this with the expectation of a special meeting, a virtual special meeting on this. I think it's a quick issue once we have the information. And Nate, would you even be open to, even Monday or something, the 28th?
We could, I think within the next week would be better.
Okay.
And then we could make some of those initial calls to the homeschool families as well.
Okay.
Do it all at once. In fact, we could set in our future agenda, we could set a meeting.
Yeah.
If that will work with everybody right here.
When we get to that, let's just kind of poll everybody and see what day next week would work.
I did contact Dan today to see if he would have any additional information but I didn't hear back from him, so.
All right. All right, so we are all in favor then of tabling this topic for 1 week?
yeah.
I don't think we have to do anything special as a vote for that then?
I don't think you want to say specifically 1 week, do you?
No, probably not, but we will table this topic for now.
Thank you.
You're right, because then something could happen, and knowing my luck, it would, Marion. All right, then, we'll move forward then on to the remaining agenda items for the evening. Next up would be policy 167.3 of public comments at board meetings, and this would be the second reading point then, in that the proposed change under this policy would allow to move from 3 minutes per speaker to 4 minutes. Is there any more conversation that anybody would like to have on this topic? Is there a motion to support the change in this
I would
policy?
make a motion to extend individual public comments at school board meetings from 3 to 4 minutes in policy 167.3.
I'll second.
All right, a first by Bill, a second by Barb. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Any noes? All right, motion passes 7-0.
I would also like to add, though, that, there's times when people are talking, and so it's nice to let them continue, so.
I believe that's
I-
already built in the
Yeah,
policy.
yeah,
that we made.
that's a good reminder though, Marion, though, yeah, and we still have that language in the policy, and I think that's fair. All right, then, moving on, we'll move back to Janan, with a recommendation for a bus purchase.
And we talked a lot about this already
Yeah.
in her report. There's actually two things that we would need to do. We actually need a resolution to pursue the clean diesel grant, which is somewhat unusual in terms of grants, that we have to get board approval before we enter an application. Usually, once we would be awarded the grant, then the board would accept that. This is a little bit in reverse. And then, as Janan and I were working through again, when you see that we wouldn't be able to have a bus delivered until February, that's why we wanted to take action now. And so, part of a proposed motion would be a maximum price, and Janan can talk a little bit about that, regardless of the clean diesel grant. And as Trevor had pointed out, we are on a plan right now that we would replace a bus every 2 years, and we actually have, again, more buses coming off than we do, coming off of payments than we would be adding back on. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Janan?
No, I think that's pretty good.
So Janan, though, with this bus, or I guess you kind of talk about a standard and snub nose bus as well too. Is that just still up for decision?
Yeah,
Capacity?
based on price and, I guess availability. If Nelson would have a snub nose on the lot versus a conventional bus.
Yeah.
Currently, we have 3 conventional buses from Thomas. So the nice thing about that is if we continue with that type of bus, it doesn't matter what bus you get into, everything is completely the same. I mean, we have right now 3 different buses, and it's, when you get into them and you're not used to driving a certain one, you're hunting, like, where is everything, and everything's different. So it would be nice if they were all exactly the same.
I agree. Yeah. Okay.
So Janan, does the fact as to whether or not we would receive the grant really make any difference in what your recommendation would be? I mean, we still need to purchase a bus, right? Okay.
That's correct.
Would it make any difference in the type of bus you would purchase if we weren't to get the grant?
No,
Okay, so
It would
that's
not.
just kind of icing on the cake that we're hoping to get.
we're hoping to get,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Is this a one-time grant? Can we apply again?
Um, I've never seen it come through. It's something that popped up in my email one day and I started looking at it. It sounds like it's been around for a while, but I am not aware, I was never aware of it.
When
And-
the 3 of us met
Yeah.
last week, we believe in reading through all the information that for every new bus, as long as this grant is available, for every new bus that we would purchase, we'd have this opportunity. We have to keep bringing it back to the
Yeah,
board. But
and as long as we scrapped one,
correct.
yeah.
Yep.
Right. Which we don't need to keep expanding the fleet, at a crazy exponential number, but,
Right.
yeah. Okay. All right, so then, is there any other questions from the board on,
I just have one more, I'm sorry.
ahead.
What is the potential grant amount? Do we know?
It's 25% of a brand-new bus.
Okay.
So realistically, I think we figured out we were looking at maybe 26,000, was it, Sherry?
I thought just shy of that.
just shot, right?
Okay.
It was netted to be like 67.
Okay.
If we went with the 95,000, we'd pay 67.
Okay. Thank you.
Does 95,000 give you enough to for all the extras or anything that you'd want on the bus?
So that's something that Nelson's looking into, and they're gonna get me the price quote on that. One of the things is, do we want racks on a bus versus no racks on the bus? The other thing is, my understanding is every 3rd bus, the board had, this was years ago, had approved to get the understorage. So this would be the bus that we would have understorage. And I did talk to Nelson about that, because currently the other buses that we have, the newer ones that we have with the understorage, they're not as big as like what we have on bus 8. So when we take football, they have a camera. And that camera currently does not fit under any of any of the understorage except in bus 8. So we would be getting an expanded understorage on this one. And I'm sure that comes with a cost.
Yeah, so you would need a separate motion then for that, because it would take it above the 95,000?
No, I don't believe it would.
Oh, okay,
So, no,
okay, perfect.
no.
Okay. I just want to make sure, you don't have to wait on us to, move forward.
No,
Remind me, Janine, I think the last bus we bought was in the $91,000 to $93,000 range? Was it 89?
I think it was 89. It was bus 19, yeah, so it was 89,000. And that had no racks on it, that has no understorage on it.
Okay. So is 95,000 enough though with the understorage?
Honestly, until I get that quote, I can't
Yeah.
really say. I can give them a call tomorrow and just kind of see, what a price would be on it.
So would there be any value in adding this in if the special meeting, if we were to table this to let you get that information so you don't, because otherwise then you're gonna have to wait, if we say no right now, and we'd have to table it for next month and delay it out even longer. I just hate for you to like not have enough money there to,
Right.
and then have to wait.
But that probably wouldn't be a bad idea because we do have to have the papers in by June 23rd.
Nate?
We could still make a motion to approve the clean diesel grant.
Yep.
The bus could wait. I thought we were good at 95, so.
Well, if you're okay with that,
You first responded, you didn't think it'd take it over 95, correct?
I wouldn't think it would take it over, but I don't know that 100%.
Because another way is we could always come back to it if it ends up
Yeah.
going over.
Yeah,
So
right.
This way she's got the leeway to go ahead and get rolling on it.
That's a good way to look at it too then. Yeah, we could always just bring it back up then at that special meeting. Okay. That's why we talk.
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution to pursue the clean diesel grant through the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a first by Mike and a second by Ryan. All in favor, say yes.
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 Yes, any noes? All right. Is there a motion to support the purchase?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of Thomas Bus at a maximum price of $95,000 from Nelson Bus Service, Inc.
I will second that.
All right, a first by Ryan and a second by Marion. All in favor, say yes.
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 Any noes? All right, there you go.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Janan.
Thank you.
All right, next up on the agenda this evening then is Act 143 drill approval.
And this is something that we have to do annually and then submit. It actually we need the approval, but they've already been submitted on Becca Johnson. Becca Johnson had done this. And it's really just, again, checklists that we're following our safety procedures at the 3 different levels per year. So.
And you said it's already been done?
They've already been submitted and accepted, but we still have to have board approval for that.
So this is fairly academic.
Yeah.
I would make a motion to approve the 2020, 2021 Act 143 requirement checklist.
I'll second.
All right, a first by Bill, a second by Ryan. All in favor, say yes.
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 Any noes? All right, very good. Motion passes 7-0. All right, next up on the discussion possible actions is Tri-Core District Insurance Renewal.
And so this is for our district insurance, not to be confused with our health, dental insurance. Tri-Core we've been with for some time. We work with John Gibson, who's the representative. Actually, Janan and I just contacted John today to give you an idea about his service. One of the things Janan asked about is in recruiting drivers. There's another district that we're aware of that will allow somebody that doesn't have a CDL license currently but might be interested in driving a bus to get on with one of our staff members on private property, so on district property, in a empty lot and just test it out. Is this something that I might be interested in? So we had to ask John that question. Is this allowable under our insurance? And he said, yes, if it's open lot on private property, your property, under the supervision. So he gets right back to us. That's one example of some of the things that we ask of him from time to time. Others, can we have fireworks at homecoming? That was a no. But he does, we do check with him from time to time as things come up. This current premium is up just over 4% from last year. Historically, it's down from 2017-18 and also down from 2018-19. And you can see in what was given to the board side-by-side comparison on what different types of components of the premium went up compared to last year. The one question that I had on being new to this position, I would have assumed inland marine had something to do with water. It has nothing to do with water. It simply means when we are basically towing things, that they are included as well. So that was something that I learned in this process this time.
And what about linebacker?
That's actually a technology piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to support?
I will make a motion to approve the district's insurance renewal with Tricor for the 2021-2022 fiscal year as presented.
I'll second.
First by Barb, a second by Ryan. All in favor, say yes.
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 Any noes? All right, motion passes 7-0. All right, then next up this evening is staff retirement.
And so typically we would have and we have had a March 1st deadline to put in for district retirement. We had accepted one retirement, Kay Zimmerman's outside of that window. When that happened, Bob Butler from WASB suggests that we open up that timeline for 21 days. That would have been from our last board meeting till June 1st. In that time, we had Teresa Schultz put in for retirement. I just want to say about Teresa, she's been here 16 years, has been a core part of the middle school. When you talk about someone that adds value to the district, the amount of time that she spends with students outside of her classroom is pretty significant. She's one of the first ones that will chaperone a dance for the students, whether it's Halloween or the holidays or a spring dance. She will do overnights with the 8th grade class as they're exiting. She will do just about anything she can. She started a forensics program that has helped to feed our high school forensics program and make it the success it is. So I didn't want to lose that piece because it is a late submission that she really has done quite a bit for the middle school over the last 16 years.
Is there a motion to support Teresa's retirement?
I'll make a motion to approve the retirement request of Teresa Schultz effective June 4th, 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, first by Ryan, a second by Bill. All in favor, say yes.
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 Any noes? Perfect. All right. We are moving on to discussion items this evening, and a secondary math curriculum update.
One of the requests of the board has been, as we look to change, make decisions on curriculum, that the board isn't simply presented with the final approval to buy textbooks, for example, for, several tens of thousands of dollars, and that we get some updates along the way. So Mr. Loshaw is here tonight. The board has a summary from Mr. Loshaw about where they have left off with this is for secondary, so 6 through 12. The Carnegie pilot, which we had tried last year, some of the problems that we have had with that, and now we're down to a few finalists that Mr. Loshaw can talk a little bit about and then answer any questions from the board. We will be coming back in July for a final approval of this so that we can get the materials ordered by the start of the school year. That and scheduling professional development for our staff.
Hi, everybody. I'll make this as brief as possible. So the math team, which was made up of Mr. Kreiderman and Mr. Schwinn from the high school, Tim Serum, who's middle school, high school, and Melissa Whitmore, our instructional coach, as well as Kim Johnson, who was the 6th grade math teacher. So we, in October, November, our staff had a professional development with our pilot program. It didn't go as we had hoped. We had made specific requests relating to what we needed improvement on and what we were seeking guidance on. Unfortunately, we didn't get any of that. We got a very similar presentation to what we received in August. And so from then, we started to really evaluate where we're at. In February, Rebecca Johnson sent out a basic survey to our entire 6-12 teachers, asking where they were at, because it was a pilot program. We had to make our decision in the next month or two. From the results we got, we decided to bring the whole group together. And in the meeting with our entire 6-12 group, they made it pretty clear that they were looking for us to seek alternate opportunities after that year. They wanted to be done with Carnegie It was a challenging year for everybody. It was a challenging year to implement a new curriculum in the way that we did, and it just didn't quite work out for where it was. So we as a department, Rebecca Johnson and I, and a lot of help, shout out to Melissa Whitmore, our instructional coach as well. We searched through a lot of curriculums that other people are using. We use something that's called Ed Reports, which does a breakdown of kind of all of the math curriculums that are available. And we brought in 5 or 6 of the like highest rated ones, and I just gave it to our math teachers, and we gave them about a month to just kind of explore it. They spent a lot of time looking at all different aspects of it, our intervention piece, our ELL students, our students with disabilities, how we can best support them. After about a month, they looked at it. We met as a department, and they just kind of had an open conversation where clearly it steered to 2 current curriculums, which we're at, which is stated in front of you, which is Envisions, and either illustrative or illustrative, depending on who you talk to, about how you actually pronounce it. So I'll work on that. And what we've learned throughout this process, and Becca's done a great job, and as she's kind of taken on this new role too with curriculum, we're kind of learning how we can best evaluate our curriculum, because at the end of the day, we just need something that is best for our students. Right, that's what we're looking for. And what we realized, what we struggled the most with Carnegie was the opportunity to get professional development in that area. As teachers, it is really hard to implement a new curriculum. You know very little about it. So what we wanted support, as much support as we could get. The 2 that we've come down to offer the best support. What we're looking for is flexible support, as well as some of our teachers have specific needs depending on what they do. As of right now, what we're looking into doing is we are going to implement for our 6th, 7th, 8th, and Algebra 1 to start, as both Mr. Kreidemann and Mr. Schwinn have agreed that they have a strong foundation of where they're at in their high school programs, and then as we move forward with our implementation, and if we're happy with where we're at, then maybe we'll slowly look at doing a little bit more implementations. So do you have any questions? I'm happy to answer any questions.
So I had a question about the PD being more flexible and customizable for illustrative.
Yeah, great question, Mike.
What do you mean about that?
So what we mean by flexible, so in general, right, curriculums are pretty similar in what they're overall going to present to you. What was interesting that they produced, and they actually introduced me to something I didn't know. So I taught math for 8 years. I didn't know they partnered with someone that's called the Wisconsin Math Institute, which will then provide us a direct partner who understands math in Wisconsin and understands what's going on, works with other schools in Wisconsin that are also implementing illustrative math, and they provided just something that we haven't seen before, which is, so there's, I think it's 10 or 11 units depending on what you're looking at. Illustrative, for a pretty reasonable fee, will offer us 2-hour training sessions with other schools in the area that are also implementing illustrative that just do overviews for us. And will help our teachers be like, okay, in this unit, here's what's coming up. Here are the challenging things. If you're crunched for time, here's maybe some things that you can look to cut out. And it just helps kind of prepare our teachers in what is a challenging thing to implement a brand new curriculum. And as you guys are going to see, we are bringing in a brand new 6th and 7th grade math teacher. So it's another great opportunity for them. Yeah, that was a really good question. I hope that answered it for you.
Yep.
Other questions about where we're kind of at with our curriculum process?
No, it was a good update to hear too, hear a little bit of the struggles, and the reasons as to why, okay, we're deciding not to move forward with this and looking at other avenues.
Yeah, absolutely.
I may know the answer to this, but do you feel like our experience with Carnegie helped you in this next process of choosing something different?
It really did. And Carnegie, it could be a great curriculum, absolutely. I think it was a really hard year in terms of a pandemic and how you can best provide support. What we learned through that is the professional development, what's important. Our teachers are fantastic teachers. Once they know how to teach, or kind of how the layout and the structure of the curriculum goes, they're going to handle it. The challenging thing is that first part of that implementation, and how we need direct support, and also more so feel that when the support is going to be there throughout, and it's going to be exactly what we need, because their time is valuable. So I don't want them to be spending 2 hours and after getting out of 2 hours and not feeling like they've got what they needed from it. So yeah, it was a huge learning experience. I think Becca would say the same thing, that we definitely learned a lot as we start to look at all of our kind of curriculums over the next couple of years, and as we look at our curriculum rollout. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
In the process of evaluating these two other curricula, were you able to communicate with any other districts that do currently use those?
Yeah, so both parties do a great job of kind of contacting. That's kind of, going to be next steps for us to make sure everyone's okay with where we're at. I do know we do have a direct contact with Illustrative right now, as our instructional coach is actually working with another instructional coach at a different district who's also going to start the implementation process of that. And Envisions did put me information of a couple different schools as well in the area, larger area, that we'd be able to work on too.
All right. Any other questions?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Wilshaw.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, then, for other discussion topics would be board goals update. So as we made a commitment, to reviewing, these from time to time, our current goals of being the academic, goal set forth, a communication and community engagement goal, and fiscal responsibility goal. Nate, can you refresh my memory on, were there changes to this? There was one change to this,
So,
right?
yeah, the board had asked for more specifics on the academic goal. And what I had relayed to the board in May is the amount of detail that we are going into when we're looking at individual students, both in reading and in math, looking at their scores, tracking growth over time. And so I had put in 2 links with the student data redacted so that you could see, again, what each building is doing, not only with our staff, but our instructional coaches as well, just to see how we're monitoring if our students are showing that year's worth of growth in reading and math. So I wanted to illustrate that to the board. The other change that I added, just as some questions that had come up from the board, is under the communications and community engagement goal. This is highlighted for the board in what was previously shared, is the mentors. So that this would be the mentors that are from the middle and high school, primarily high school, that go down to the elementary school. We had said that we would increase the number by 50%. And what we're trying to do is work back to where we were at a peak. Obviously, COVID had changed some things, the virtual learning, and then not having all of our elementary students there. But at one point in time, we had 30 different students from the high school that were going down and doing some kind of mentoring at the elementary school. It was great this year, even on lunch duty, to see some of our middle school students go down and help those students. Of course, if you're a second grader, you'd probably like to be helped by a 8th grade student rather than maybe one of the teachers that's always there helping. And so Kelsey had a couple of great students that not only get the service hours for that, but they create those connections. And again, something that the kids can look up to there. So that was just a clarifying point that we'd like to get back to that peak number at some point around 30, which was where we had topped out at a couple of years ago.
Nate, how do you see increasing that? What will you do to reach the?
So in the past, what had happened is that was assigned, that was one of the ways in the high school health course that they could get service hours. And one of the things that Heather's really good at that we've tried to promote in the past is anytime we have an opportunity to be able to get that out to students so that they know, boy, if I just went down on my lunch periods, or I could go down in my study hall and help, whether it's in a classroom, on the playground, in the lunchroom, and I can get service cord hours for that, be able to do it. The other part, there's some heavy lifting on Kelsey's part to be able to know when students are coming, especially sometimes on an A-B schedule, and then at what time per day. But once that's set and you get reliable kids, it's basically promoting and saying this is a great way for you to give back. And maybe the best example that I have seen, and Kelsey will remember this, 2 years ago, we were having some issues on the playground with the current 6th grade students, not playing basketball the way that you would anticipate somebody to play basketball. So we had a couple of volunteers to go down from the high school that were on the high school basketball team, and the change was almost immediate. They looked up to these kids, and I will tell you, every time the high school kids came back, and again, they left at their lunch, and then they took a little bit of the study hall time after that. They were most of the time sweating, enjoying that they got to play basketball as well with these kids. But again, it was service hours, and just the immediate change that the modeling with the role model was there for them was fantastic. So a lot of it is promotion, and Mrs. Schmitz and Mr. Loshaw do a good job at saying, hey, here's an opportunity if you're available. And then they've got to coordinate with Kelsey and Melissa at the other building. It's a fantastic program.
Not to be nitpicky, but on the current goals, the academic goal, I feel like those two sentences are two different goals. That one of them is, you're asking for 100% of Belleville students to meet or exceed grade level targets as kind of the primary there, and demonstrate yearly growth. But then in the second statement, which seems like a more achievable goal, it's not really, you're not really specifying anything from the previous statement. It's just a different goal, I think.
Right, and just to be clear on that second piece, so every student in the Belleville School District will demonstrate 1 year's growth in reading and math annually. That is has been the building level goals that we've had for the last 2 years, both at the elementary and in the middle and high school.
Any other discussion?
That's kind of like the building block too. We have to get everybody to at least grow one grade levels a year, and then we can start to get everybody up to the right grade level.
Exactly, Mike.
This is something that I think we discuss every time too. Yearly growth or grade level targets was something that single time we brought up this goal, it was, what are we actually
But you're
striving
right.
for?
You're right. In order, a lot of our students are already at grade level, and we still want them, even if they're at grade level, we still want them to continue to grow. And even if we have a kid that in 6th grade is already reading at the 10th grade level, we don't want them to stay at the 10th grade level in 7th grade. They should still be showing that year's worth of growth the following year. And so that gives us that momentum and forward push. I will say that you're right, Mike. If we're going to get every student at grade level, you start with getting them to show that year's worth of growth every year. And so this is something we have next Wednesday and Thursday. The administrative team will get together and do quite a bit of this planning on what our professional development will look like to start the year, and then just to start to build out a professional development calendar. So we have a pretty good idea what we'll be doing on each one of those Mondays that the board has thankfully afforded the time for that. So this is where we would go forward, especially with the academic goal. And then, of course, the communication and the fiscal responsibility goals would be a part of that, but not necessarily what we need to plan out our professional development.
Any other discussion?
So I had asked a question about your strategic plan document.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's Joe Donovan that gave you feedback
That's
on it. Or
Joe Schrader,
sorry,
yes.
yeah. So those are things that haven't been actually acted upon yet in terms of updating what we categorize.
Correct.
things and
Those
stuff
are
like
those are things that he has suggested when we had met with him that are part of a good plan.
Any other questions? All right, then we'll move on. The other discussion topic this evening is Dane County Youth Assessment results.
Hi, everybody. I did just want to add to the service hours. One thing that was extremely beneficial this year is not only our high school students helping our elementary students, but we had several high school students and middle school students tutoring and mentoring each other, both virtually and in person. Most of the relationships started out pure academic and helping them with homework that they were struggling in, and turned into, especially for our high school students to our middle school students, how to be a successful student, how to stay organized, how to study for tests. And so that's something that I hope to continue in the future. So kind of just a side note there. Dane County Youth Assessment. For those of you that are unfamiliar with this is a survey that the county does every 3 years. And as a county group, we are sent information about 9 months, 6 to 9 months before the survey actually goes out. And they have a draft survey and suggested topics that districts would like to see on the survey. And then the coalition works together to create the survey. You can look it over and give suggestions on what you would like to see changed or implemented into the survey. And I've actually talked to a few staff members over the course of the last 5 months, and parents even recently, about some ideas for future surveys. And so one thing I may suggest to the consortium that puts this together is, should there be, instead of administrators on this committee, but should there be teachers and or parents that would be part of giving input to this survey as well. So I'm going to share that with the county. And then then moving on in the process, you have a window that you can administer the survey. This year it was done all virtually. Our students actually happened to be in the hybrid model during that time, so some students were actually in the building when they took it, and some students were at home virtually. Other districts did it solely virtually. So the middle school students took it at the end of January, high school at the beginning of February. And then we received our district results back about the beginning of April. And the county results, we have actually only received the high school county results at this time. We have not received the county results for the middle school yet at this point. I do keep getting updates that are saying they are coming. Possibly in the next week or two, and I keep waiting, so I can update you on any of that. The piece of that, and then when I get the survey results, I looked at two big things at these results. I compared us to the county, and I looked for differences between Belleville and the county, and you can see in the slideshow that was shared with you, I put that in the notes of any big takeaways between Belleville High School and Dane County High Schools, as well as Belleville Middle School and Dane County Middle Schools. And then also looking at where we were at 3 years ago, and are there drastic changes in our results from 3 years ago to today. And just the things I want to highlight on there are, the last couple of slides. I should actually say I did some updates to this after some conversations with parents and a couple of staff members since this was linked to you, and I think Nate relinked it.
The high school should be updated.
Yep. This afternoon. So in looking at that, some of the key takeaways are, just as we have talked about time and time again, more resources to deal with the social, emotional, mental health of our students. Very specifically in the survey, some of the takeaways were students fitting in, different situations in bullying, whether social media is involved in that, and then different anxieties from school. Homework from school and the pressure to achieve. Of that high achievement. So how do we take all of those pieces and provide resources for our students, and then resources or trainings for our staff to help our students in those areas, as well as our parents to help their children and our students, which then goes along with continuing to provide that parent outreach in other areas where vaping, other substance abuses. We've recently, with the help of Belleville Area Cares, human trafficking, so continuing in those areas of parent outreach as well. And then that other piece of that physical healthy self, in terms of getting the right amount of sleep and eating. Food service and breakfast was a concern 3 years ago, and actually our numbers got worse in terms of our students eating a proper diet, is specifically breakfast. When you look at 2018 to 2021, Stacy and I have talked about some ideas in terms of offering a breakfast mid-morning, and how do we maybe allow some time for students that, because when you walk, or when students walk in the door and you greet them in the door, there's breakfast right at the door, and then I'll say, no thank you, I'm not hungry. So we're working on some different ways to get them some breakfast. So those are our next steps, big takeaways from the high school survey. The middle school survey, one of the big takeaways was very similar to the high school in terms of that social emotional learning, struggles with peers in school. The added piece to that that was highlighted more on the middle school survey than on the high school was, what am I going to do when I leave high school? And so we've done a lot of work, Mr. Weber, this past year, and we will continue to work on Zello and doing some of those career exploration ideas through Zello. The field trips that we had taken for Future Quest, we did not get to MATC this year with our 8th graders. We hope to do that this coming year, and they actually have a program for 9th graders too, so we're hoping to do that same, since next year's 9th graders did not get that opportunity this past year. So those were some of the key takeaways. And then the one way to implement that, Mr. Weber talked about in May, the Hope Squad. And so actually the team of student services just met last week and got some ideas of how to move forward with that in terms of the social, emotional well-being and mental health of our students, in working with other organizations in the community, and especially Belleville Area Cares, to bring some of those resources to our community, our parents, and our staff. They have quite a few ideas. They're looking at definitely per term or 4 times per year, and even increasing that to every other month, doing something for students and families in the community. Questions?
Any questions from the board?
So you mentioned that there could be input from others. When would, I mean, you just took this, it's only every 3 years, so what kind of timeline is there?
So it was like last April when they first started giving some information out. So I actually already put a reminder in my calendar for April of 2022. I'm going to reach out to them proactively to suggest this, to say, might we want to get a parent input group, a teacher, staff input group now. But I've already put in my calendar that when I start to get the notifications of these groupings, that I can bring that up to them.
Do you know who currently, I mean, I know it's Dane County, but do you know, like, titles of who's developing the questions? I noticed the change between the last one and this, that on some of them. Do you, I mean.
It's a group of people. It's
mental
called the
health
K-12. Oh, like what their I do not know. Like, do we have physicians? Do we have I don't know the breakdown of that, but I could find that out for you.
I can tell you, when I was a part of this would have been the 2018 survey, And that group got together, like Heather was talking about, to start talking about changes that would be made from the 2015 survey. Most of the staff members from larger school districts tended to be social workers, counselors, sometimes psychologists. That was who most of the larger school districts in Dane County were sending as a representative. They weren't, to Heather's point, they weren't classroom teachers, administrators, just because Belleville's smaller. And at that time, I think we had a little bit of change in our Student Services Committee. I was the one that had gone and listened in on those conversations. Yeah.
So I know you can apply a lot of things that were taken away from this, and there's a lot of good things in it too, or answers. But, and I think we saw part of today, as a sidebar, if there are changes, that would have been a good heads up. I noticed you had changed some things, but it was like 5 o'clock, so.
Sure.
So some of the ways that things are or the question is given to a young person's brain as to how they're going to, I don't know, I think it would be excellent to get some
Well, and the
educational
same,
people in there and parents.
the same prompt could be looked at differently or understood differently by 6 different young people. So, yeah.
Some
like-
of that is just because it's subjective, but there are ways to narrow that
Yeah,
down. So
agreed.
that they're gonna read it a little more.
Yep,
simply.
definitely.
So, okay. Thanks.
So I brought up the point of trying to get more regular updates on this kind of stuff. For targets like you're talking about with breakfast, we can get those sorts of numbers from Ms. Detweiler, on how many breakfasts we're serving throughout the year or whatever. But some of these other ones, if we're gonna target, like, we wanna make sure that somebody has an adult in the school to talk to. I mean, we can probably do that do our own sort of surveying that doesn't require the whole Dane County Youth Assessment thing. So are we gonna try to do that, just to make sure that we're gonna target this, we gotta make sure we're on the right track instead of waiting for 3 years from now, like, we didn't hit the mark, so what do we do now? Wait another 3 years, try something else, wait another 3 years?
Yes, actually, as part of our student services team, and this year, our plan was last summer, we were implementing social emotional learning as part of every Monday's PD. And part of that was to do a survey for our students a couple of times throughout the year. They did do one back in late October, I think it was. But then we did not do another one in the spring. And those were very focused around virtual learning. But I think that is something that as a district, we could do more often to measure some of these specific things and keep a set of very consistent questions, and then maybe a set of questions that's more tailored to what's currently happening.
Yeah, especially if you have a question, or a survey with like 4 questions on it instead of, whatever this was, 25, 50, I don't know.
It was over
100.
119 or something like that, yes.
Not as overwhelming.
Yep.
Thanks, Heather, for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you.
All right, last up this evening is boardsmanship on collective commitments review. If it'd be all right, I'd like to just take a 5-minute break before we dive into this. Can't sit much longer here for a moment. moment break there. So the last thing on the discussions this evening was just our commitment to reviewing our collective commitments from time to time. And so on the calendar, this came up with reviewing our collective commitments to one another and trying to just drive a little bit of conversation. So we've got our nice laminated collective commitments here sitting next to us. So I guess that one of the, from Drew's output was that, we would kind of ask each other, which collective agreements are a strength of the board, which collective agreements do we need to improve on as a group, and a review and discussion around all 8 collective commitments as a whole. So I think we'll just kind of start there and see if anybody wants to kick it off with just sharing some agreements that you think we're doing well at, and some that maybe we can continue to focus in on.
I would say the focus on kids is definitely a strength. I think we all focus on kids. That's our primary focus.
Anybody else?
Be engaged. I think everybody comes to the meeting and gives their full attention, asks questions to get better understanding.
Yeah.
And we're prepared. Come to meetings prepared. And I agree with what everyone said so far. I think we are focused on the kids. I think we come prepared. We do a good job being engaged. I think a lot of the discussions show that we're searching and asking for data to drive our decisions as well. I mean, there's a lot of good, I think, that we are doing.
Yeah. Marion or Barb, Ryan? Any feedback?
I agree with those guys. I think the focus on kids is there for all of us. I don't think any of us are here for any other reason.
Yeah. What are some ones that we can take a deeper focus in on and work harder at being better at?
I think there's been struggles with agreeing to disagree, and the manner in which it's happened previously.
Yeah, I would agree with that one as well too. And even me personally, focusing in on that, and ensuring that we are working together as a team is another one. I think that this last year has been very tough. We've done a lot of good things, but it's also not only has it driven the community, to be a little bit more puzzled pieced. We just got to bring those pieces back and interlock them back together. Anything else from anybody on other
Yeah,
things that we can work on?
I agree. I think working as a team is a challenge when you've got a lot of disparate opinions and places that we've all come from, but I think the mechanics are here. I don't see a reason that we can't, quite frankly. I do think that being open-minded and agreeing to disagree similarly are always a challenge. They will always be difficult unless you're in a room with 8 people who think exactly the same as you. So that's a constant, it's a work in progress, always. I think the best we can do is just remind ourselves that those things are important and work on making sure we do it. Because I think we can. And I honestly, my experience is limited here. But in the 2 meetings that I've had, that's basically what's happened. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
And perhaps a little naive.
Are there any goals that just anybody feels like just isn't working, just doesn't fit in line with us as a board right now? Then I guess that with that, the last question that I'd pose to the group here would be is that, okay, we've got a few that we've, just kind of discussed about working on. Does anybody have any suggestions on how we can achieve those?
One of the things that Mary and I had talked about, and you can see it in homework, is, and I think that would go as to work as a team and maybe somewhat to be open-minded, is to find out a little bit more about each other and how we operate. I did find there's different personality tests that you can take. Some are rather expensive. I found one for $49.95 that we could pay each one for. This one happened to be free. Asked a series of questions. What I would suggest is if the board, doesn't take long, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then if the board could print out the results. I believe there's 4 different categories that the individual board members would fall into. And we could have a discussion in July about, we could post what those categories are and where the board members fall into. When we've done these with other groups, it's been interesting to see, maybe Ryan and I disagree on a lot of things. And when I can see where Ryan is and where I am, it might give me some insight as to, okay, maybe I get why we don't always come to an agreement on this, but provide some insight into that. If the board would take that on for July, we could make that part of boardsmanship for that time.
Sounds good.
See how that segue worked? All right, then, we'll continue to move forward then. So let's talk about some future agenda items for the next meeting.
We have several. The July calendar has the handbooks, so that would be the student handbooks, the athletic and activities handbook, which I know Mr. Fell has already begun to work on, and then any changes to the employee handbooks. I know there'll be some changes with the employee handbooks based on earlier board discussions on liquidated damages of employees that leave the district after signing a contract. We'll work on that. The financial audit will be happening at the end of this month. I don't know if we'll have the results by the July meeting. It is on the calendar, so we may need to push that off, but it is on the calendar. Others, as part of the curriculum update that we just had tonight on math, Kelsey would like a little bit of time in July to talk about departmentalization at the upper elementary, which means that teachers are teaching core subject areas and then sharing their students instead of just one classroom teacher. One may teach math, one may teach science, one may teach social studies, another ELA, and then they share their students. And that's a model they're working on at the upper elementary. We had a request about coaching expectations in July. That will come along with coaching approval. So Mr. Fell will provide us with what he goes through when he meets with the coaches on their expectations. Their behavior, language is something that we've dealt with for several years to make sure that when we've got a coach that they're upholding the same kinds of things that would happen in a classroom. And sometimes we've had coaches that haven't always used the proper language around young people. So that'll be part of that as well. We will have I believe it will schedule it as our pre-meeting listening session on social media posts by staff. I'm not sure who that may be from Boardman and Clark, but something that has been asked by different board members over the past few years to address, and we'll get hopefully some real clean answers as to what's appropriate, what's not, to post on social media for our staff members. The other the other thing that we're looking at is similar to what the board had just done with the staff retirement party. I know there's been some desire on the board's parts to get together with staff One of the ideas that we're working on now, because staff, once summer starts, are on all kinds of different schedules, is to potentially have, in those back-to-school days, which are that second to last week of August before Labor Day, would be to have some kind of a cookout, some kind of a welcome back that the board could sponsor, hopefully be there, and then be able to interact with staff on a certainly more informal basis. When we've done that at the middle school with parents and staff members, it's really worked out well. It's just a great way for people to get together and have those informal conversations with one another. So. And then if there is, if people can access their calendar, if the board could pick a day next week to come back with JEDI once we have the updated numbers, that would be fantastic. I'm not sure if the 21st works for board members. That would be a week from today. Otherwise, sometimes we can fit them in on Wednesdays. That would be the 23rd of June, Wednesday.
I'm out on the 21st.
How about the 20th?
To be clear, is this to be virtual or in person?
We could do it virtually. That worked well the last time that we did that. Trying to think what that was around. We had it obviously posted, but that was, I believe, a Wednesday night that we had done.
I mean, I could possibly log in, but I'm,
What were the dates you threw out?
Sounds like the 23rd is now on the table for a virtual meeting on JEDI and any other staffing approvals we might have in the meantime.
6:30.
6:30 we could do?
I'm busy at 7. I'm on the road at 6:30.
Okay.
24th, can we squeeze it in on the 24th?
Mm-hmm. 24th,
I'm okay with that.
6:30? Fantastic. That's all I had for future agenda items.
I had something that, ACT, we never did see those, were those results?
Those were, I
Did we?
believe, in Mrs. Schmitz's principal report in, no?
We didn't have them all. They are, I'm working on our July board report. They will be in the July board.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you didn't have the collective score at that point, did you? Good catch, Bob.
All right. Well, then, at this time, the contemplated motion to convene into closed session under Wisconsin statutes 19.85, paren 1 CF for compensation, for consideration including action if appropriate regarding employment, promotion compensation, or performance evaluation data of potential employees. Considering financial, medical, social, and personal histories or disciplinary data of a specific person, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons except where par. B applies, which if discussed in public would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations. Is there a motion to support?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, first by Ryan, a second by Jill. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any noes? All right, motion passes 7-0.